Ottawa.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, June 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 17 degrees. It's 15 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Stay-at-home order province-wide. Almost 2 months ago, that was declared as COVID-19 cases were surging, but it has now come to an end. But most of the public health restrictions are still in effect. You can't get a haircut. You can't go to a mall, take a workout class, drink a pint on a patio, or send the children to school. Now, as businesses demand permission to reopen, our Kevin Meisner joins us from Queen's Park. We are expecting to hear an announcement this afternoon on the plan for the final month of school.
Premier Doug Ford and his cabinet are meeting this morning at Queen's Park. Whatever is decided will be announced at 1 this afternoon when the Premier speaks. He'll be joined by the Ministers of Education and the Minister of Health. Now, Ford has been leaning toward keeping schools closed for the final 3 weeks of the school year to prevent a spike in COVID cases, which continues to trend down in Ontario. Ontario is no longer under a stay-at-home order, but nothing really changes as of today. The padlock on the province's business still firmly in place. Outdoor gatherings also still limited to 5 people. Dan Kelly with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business tells me Ontario is the most locked-down jurisdiction in Canada, if not North America. He's calling on the Premier to lift some of those restrictions right now.
We're asking the government to allow low-risk business activity to take place now, things that perhaps should never have been closed in the first place. For goodness sakes, Alberta will be fully open around the same time that someone in Ontario can start to get a haircut.
Now, stage 1 of this province's reopening doesn't allow for patio dining and limited retail shopping, at least until June 14th. Salons and barber shops likely won't be allowed to open until stage 2 in early July. I'm Kevin Meisner.
City News Time, 9:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Plenty of sunshine for the area today, a warm high with a southwest wind, the high 28 degrees. Tonight will cloud over, rain for the overnight hours, 15 for the low, and tomorrow cooler with light rain in the morning, showers for the afternoon. Tomorrow the high 21. For today, the high 28.
And right now in Ottawa, 17 degrees. It's 15 in Smiths Falls. Retired senator who headed up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission says Canadians should be prepared for the discovery of more children's remains at other residential schools right across Canada.
The Commission's former chairman, Murray Sinclair, says the grisly finding of 215 bodies in Kamloops last week mirrors the horrendous stories he heard from many survivors of the school system. He says they talked about children who suddenly went missing, including into mass burial sites. Sinclair says Canadians must persevere in the investigation into what happened and ensure that healing programs are in place to help survivors. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission operated between 2008 and 15 and provided Indigenous people affected by the residential school system with a chance to share their experiences. Karen Rebo, the Canadian Press.
City News Time, 9:03. A Correctional Service of Canada audit finds federal prison staff are breaching solicitor-client privilege. The audit reveals staff improperly intercepted communications between inmates and their lawyers in 10% of the cases. The prison service does have legal authority in many instances to intercept inmate communications during the course of a visit without receiving prior authorization from a court. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
it's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much for joining us here on the Rob Snow Show. I'm Sam LaPrade filling in for Rob. It is Wednesday, June the 2nd. We have a very, very full show for you today. We're going to be talking about everything from the beautiful town of Smiths Falls, of course, to gun violence, and of course, remembering the 215 children found in Kamloops. We're going to be talking about that as well today. It is June 2nd today. 21 years ago today, on June 2nd of the year 2000, a young man was born that was going to change the lives of many, many people. And that is Jonathan Petri. We lost Jonathan Petri April 4th of 2018. We are thinking about the butterfly child as we know him. He certainly changed the lives of many, many people, a huge Ottawa Senators fan, and a smile that would light up the room. We're thinking about his mom today. We're thinking about his family. His beautiful mom, Tina Boileau, was really the mom of moms. We're thinking about her today. He certainly impacted many, many people. If you ever had a chance to meet Jonathan, trust me, you would never forget. Sending lots of love to the town of Russell today, because that was really his hometown, and they're all thinking about him as well today. Well, let's head to the town of Smiths Falls and speak with Mayor Shawn Pankow. Hello, Mayor.
Good morning, Sam. Great to talk with you again.
Always a pleasure to speak with you. Always thinking about the town of Smiths Falls during this time. We heard some news last week that really rocked your town. The OPP has decided to pull out their dispatch there. Talk to me about the impact, and were you aware before you heard the news, Mayor?
Yes, I mean, the OPP reached out and we had a meeting the day prior to the announcement when it was shared with staff. And it's not news that we welcome. It's news that we wish had not happened, obviously. It impacts, I understand, probably about 24 people resident in our town and people who live in the surrounding townships and across eastern Ontario. And the disruption to these families is going to be significant. They have to make a decision, I think, in September, whether they're going to follow the OPP to a new community and uproot their families, or they're going to have to take a package and find a new job. A few will be able to move over to the Eastern Region headquarters, which is also in Smiths Falls, and some may be able to retire, but it's the impact on the families that concerns us the most.
And does it make it more difficult because of the situation we're in right now? Do you think, Mayor, that we're in a situation where we're in a pandemic and it just adds another sort of layer for these families, the layer and pressure?
Oh, for sure. I mean, we're as much as we hope that we have more normal schooling come September, it's still, if you're looking at kids who are having to probably change schools and trying to find a home during a housing crisis in another community where, even though prices have risen here significantly in recent years, we're still underpriced compared to other areas of the province. So it's going to be a challenge for these families, and it's something that we know there's a 3-year review which led to the closure of this comm center, and the province downsizing from 5 to 4, and with changes in technology and I guess their long-term vision, we can understand some of the reasoning, the rationale behind it. Doesn't mean we have to like it, and it's an unfortunate situation. But from a community-wide perspective, I mean, we've been through greater challenges in the past, and we've risen through those, and we will do so again.
Absolutely. And, you know, if there's anything about our conversations, I always leave them inspired, because I think you work really hard for of course, the town of Smiths Falls, for the people there. We spoke a lot about the housing crisis, which you just talked about. A lot of people are making their home in Smiths Falls. You've certainly seen an increase. What's 2021 going to look like?
Well, we're seeing high levels of construction that, greater than we've ever seen before. And I mean, like many places, we have a shortage of houses. We have a shortage of rental accommodations. And frankly, this is probably the biggest worry I have. It's the one that would keep me awake at night. And when I hear from people who have lost their home or at risk of losing their home, have no options of anywhere to go. I mean, the most affordable home someone has is the one they're in today, and if they're being squeezed out for whatever reason, whether it's justified or not, it creates some real challenges, and people are facing housing costs which are sometimes double what they are paying today, and it's just not affordable. And it when people have nowhere to go, it creates real angst and real concern. This is the foundation of their family security. So It's the biggest worry. It's the one we're developing a lot of resources for. We're working hard at trying to resolve this. We had a housing task force which ran through last year, 17 recommendations of council which were fully endorsed in December, including the formation of a housing advisory committee to oversee these recommendations and to delve deeper into it. We had our first meeting last week. We have another one next week. We know this is a crisis that, as much as we feel that we are working away at it, none of it means really much until we actually have tangible results, which means more affordable housing in our community.
Mm-hmm. We're speaking with Mayor Shawn Pankow from Smiths Falls. We know forward-thinking business leaders like Bruce Linton know that it's a great place to do business is Smiths Falls. What are you seeing from a business perspective? Are you seeing that you're attracting other businesses as well during this time?
It's pretty shocking when we have more businesses open during a pandemic than closed. I think there's been very few closures and a large number of openings, and I'm astonished. I give these entrepreneurs great credit for having the vision, the commitment, and the courage to put their life savings and their everything they've got into opening a business in a very challenging, difficult time. So I think people are recognizing the overall landscape in Smiths Falls has changed considerably over the past few years. They see opportunities, and I think that's what we're also seeing on the real estate front, where there's such incredible demand today, which did not exist 5 or 6 years ago. So I'll attribute some of that to Bruce and his vision and the work he did in creating canopy growth here, which of course has been the impetus of a lot of change in our community.
It certainly has been. And I can't help but think about tourism when I think about Smiths Falls. I know you do attract a number of people, especially in the summer months. What's the plan, or can there be a plan?
Well, a number of organizations and staff are working on different options for the summer, I guess, but contingently planning for different events. Movies Under the Stars is something my wife and some friends started a decade ago that ran very successfully for a number of summers, and we donated all the equipment to the town a few years ago. They continued on with that. That'll be starting this summer, so that's something that we need to make sure that it can fit in. It's something that families look forward to every Thursday night. A number of events which are sort of partially underway. It's all that uncertainty of not knowing how things are going to roll out. The boat has added more boats to their fleet. Our basin is full of these beautiful cruisers, and they're simply waiting for the green light to be able to fill those boats with people who can enjoy a great Rideau Canal experience and spend some time in Smiths Falls. So it's a little challenging and frustrating right now, not knowing when things will open up. I think we anticipate mid-month being somewhat different, and by mid-July being a lot different. But of course, that's all dependent on the rollout of vaccines and people getting vaccinated and us having more return to a normal summer.
Of course, and you mentioned a few minutes ago, of course, keeping you up at night is that housing crisis. How difficult has it been to be a mayor, to be a leader at this time during a pandemic where much of this is out of your control? Much of it is in the hands of the province or in the hands of the federal government. Where do you stand on that, and how difficult has it been?
Yeah, I would say initially early on, there was a lot of angst, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of worry for our businesses. And certainly for our population, especially early on, we're worried about the impact of cases in our community and the hospitalizations and people dying from this terrible disease. And we've been very fortunate that we've had, there have been cases, obviously, and there have been people who passed away, unfortunately, but it's been minimalized. And I think the public health interventions have helped. We're grateful that the federal and provincial governments have come through with supports both for individuals as well as businesses. And so that's really helped, I'd say, reduce the stress level to a great extent. But the biggest concern, as I mentioned, is that housing crisis. And we know that we can't do it on our own. Of course, we work in partnership with Lanark County. We have 279 of their RGI units in town, and we're working with a not-for-profit, CareBridge, out of Almont, who is committed to doing a 28-unit deeply affordable housing development here. And we're working with other developers, but we need all these partnerships. We need funding from other levels of government. The CareBridge application to the Rapid Housing Initiative wasn't successful, like 75% of the applicants. So they're looking at round 2 when that opens up. So it's all these partnerships that are a bit challenging and frustrating because we, as you mentioned, we're not in control of this, but we have to continue to work hard at creating all the possibilities and chasing every avenue to come up with options and to try and make sure we make a difference. And when it comes to housing, we know that if we had a plan today to build a new apartment complex, it's probably at least a year to 18 months before people are living there. So it's frustrating, especially when people are living in crisis.
Absolutely. I value your time so much. You always take our call. I'm so grateful. Mayor of Smiths Falls, Shawn Pankow. Hopefully we get to talk again soon.
Thanks a lot, Sam. Take care.
Thank you. Many of us in the Ottawa area are worried about gun violence. We're going to speak with Inspector Cartright from Ottawa Police Service when we return after this on City News.
Everyone's got their own little dreams. I want to write the next novel. I want to write a screenplay, which I still want to do. So owning my own business is something I've always in the back of your mind. Oh yeah, that'd be really cool to try and do. I end up lost my job that I had for 20 years, and I found myself with nothing. Trying to figure out what am I going to do now. I'm mid-40s, and I got a lot of different experience, mainly in retail. So I figured, you know what? Let's try to give this a go. I didn't really have any money. I started up with the little website. We went with that, and then it's kind of just grown from there. I have such a passion for this. It's not even work for me. This is a hobby that I get to, thankfully make a living off of. When you walk in, you're going to be overwhelmed, I think. With all the amount of licensed product that we have. I only sell licensed product. I don't sell anything no name or anything. Everything is 100% officially licensed, depending on the franchise. So I like to support a lot of different franchises, a lot of pop culture. So I do have a little bit of music, vinyl, Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Doctor Who, Game of Thrones, you name it. There's probably something around, or if I don't have it, you let me know and I'll do whatever I can to, try and find it for you. I do some comic books. A lot of the interesting things that I do are items that you just don't find anywhere else. I probably have the best selection of pop culture cookbooks. So cookbooks from Walking Dead and Downton Abbey and Orange is the New Black, Hannibal, Marvel, Wonder Woman. I've got the best selection of Star Trek ships in the city. Well, actually, I've got the best selection in the country. I'm the only retailer in Canada that deals directly with the company Eganville. I've got the best variety of Pop Funko figures within the city. I got the best prices, hands down. Even some of my action figures that I sell that are available at Walmart and Toys R Us, I'm cheaper than them, which is a lot of times you don't realize it. So even that small business can offer you a great value.
Voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much. I'm Sam LaPrade, filling in for Rob Snow. We're so happy you are listening and tuning in to City News. This weekend, certainly, it impacted many, many people in our community, many fear regarding the gun violence. We wanted to speak with Ottawa Police Services Inspector Cartright. Hello, Inspector.
Good morning, Sam.
It has certainly been a really tragic week here in the city. We know a number of different, of course, shootings took place. A number of young men lost their lives. It must be very frustrating for police because I understand there's no real connection that you can find at this point.
Well, there has, as you've indicated, yes, there's been a surge in the homicide rate in Ottawa, and it's been a tragedy, especially a tragedy for the families, for the siblings who have lost a sibling, for the mothers who've lost, and fathers who've lost their children. And yes, as we stated at the Police Services Board earlier this week, there's no intelligence information, no investigative leads that lead us to believe that the recent homicides are linked to one another.
Is it frightening for police to think that these were happening many times sort of in broad daylight, if you will? We sort of think about gun violence maybe in the middle of the night, and I know one of them, I believe, was. But to think, I think about that mall that we had the shooting, I believe, on Friday night in Alta Vista. I mean, we think about, I've been at that Tim Hortons, 100 times. I think, a lot of people think that could be my community, and it is the community of many people. Do you think that broad daylight makes the citizens of Ottawa even more frightened about gun violence?
What you just identified, Sam, is the concerning nature of what we saw. And let me be clear, this is not acceptable. The type of violence we're seeing, they're just tragedies, but it's also not acceptable. Regardless of the circumstances, I don't know any community, any society anywhere in the world where we would see this as acceptable. And the concern is that the homicides that you've just seen, they're related to firearms. And that brings an increased level of concern to the community. It's one thing individuals deciding to resolve their disputes with one another where it doesn't impact the rest of society. That's a concern in itself. But in these cases, yes, the particular one in Alta Vista was particularly gruesome. It was in broad daylight, even though later in the day it's quite light, in an area that you yourself said you attend, and so have I been. So yes, it's unacceptable, and that's why we've taken a number of efforts internally within the Ottawa Police to address this surge, which includes the prevention aspect of it, but also the suppression and enforcement, because we want to stop this from happening. Mm-hmm. All the prevention strategies that we are currently working on, engaging with the community and ourselves internally within the Ottawa Police, those are longer-term strategies. But to stop this from happening right now, our intent is to suppress it, identify those individuals, and you have seen we have made quite a bit of progress on our recent homicides, and we've released the photographs, the identity of the individuals we truly believe were responsible for that incident. And it's an enforcement capacity, and we're going to do that.
We often think about Ottawa Police. We often think about the budget that you would have. Of course, a lot of our taxes go towards your budget, and so they should, right? We want a safe city. Is this something where we need to throw more money at it, or is it something different?
I will leave the economics to our political masters, okay? But when we do look at policing and the issues in society now, and you know very well, Sam, there's a big push to defund the police. I think the better term is detasking the police, because I don't know any society that currently exists without policing activities towards community safety. Yes, finances, budget, personnel are always issues. It's finding ways to do better with what we have, which we currently are looking to address those issues, but also looking where the surge, where the need is. We tend to sometimes lull ourselves in a false sense of security. And when I said at the board, when the chief was present, to the chair of the board, that gangs do exist. Criminal activity does exist. Organized crime activity, it does exist in Ottawa. And unfortunately, the recent events have just brought this to light to the average citizen. But it has never been something that's been unknown to us in policing. Mm-hmm. We have an organized crime section, the Ottawa Police Service. Because there's organized crime. We have a guns and gangs unit, because we know there's certain gang activity in the city. And unfortunately, we saw some of the results of that activity in the city in the past week.
Is it worse because of the pandemic, Inspector?
This is an interesting question, and I've asked myself that a number of times. What I can state is that We have not seen, and we always need to go back to the firearm, but the firearm is at the middle of all this. We've seen a surge, actually, in the demand for firearms in North America during the pandemic. We've seen a surge in prices of an illegal firearm during the pandemic. We've seen a surge in prices of illegal narcotics during the pandemic. The people that truly, under the major investigative branch that my officers pursue, these individuals are not isolating themselves. They're not self-isolating. They're not abiding by the protocols of Ottawa Public Health, nor do I expect that they're abiding by the protocols of the province. So their activities have been ongoing. Could there be an increase in frustration in activities? Absolutely. I'm frustrated as a parent. You probably, I'm listening to everything that's happening because the pandemic has lasted a lot longer than any of us would have anticipated.
Right.
Could there be a link to that? Of course there will, but when you're in the middle of it, it's very hard to make that assumption. Those are things we're going to have to analyze later on when we're well past the pandemic to see what the trends are.
Now, I have to ask you another question. It's a different from gun violence, but I think it's a really important one. And I don't know if it's just me, and it could be just me.
Okay.
I have never seen so much street racing in my life. And my daughter and I on Greenbank Road the other night just about got clipped twice. And I called 911 on that driver. And I don't know. I just see a lot of street racing.
No, you've addressed another great safety concern right there, just traffic. Believe it or not, traffic is always the number one concern, pre-pandemic, pandemic, and it will continue to be post-pandemic. I also happen to lead the Major Collisions Investigative Unit, which responds to all the major fatals. And I can tell you that even though there's less traffic on our streets, we're seeing a lot more serious traffic incidents, and we're seeing the incident, and we've been quite active on social media to highlight the individuals that we're stopping for the percentage of speeding above the limit. So that is something that we have a number of strategies in place. I think you would have also seen a lot more police officers into those major intersections, regardless of whether it's for speeding or for the noisemaker project that we currently have ongoing to identify that. But it is something that we're dealing with, and you are right. People are those individuals who are on the street are driving faster.
Mm-hmm. And they were racing. I mean, there was two cars racing down Greenbank Road on a beautiful Sunday, evening with families in Barhaven. I mean, give me a break. I mean, it really, honestly, it upset me so much. Thank you so much for your time, and I really do value your time. I know how busy you are, and I know how hard Ottawa Police Services, all of you are working, and we just want you all to be safe. Okay.
I appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Inspector Carl Cartright from Ottawa Police Service. Are you looking for your political fix? Well, you're going to get it. Stay with us here on City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, June 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 19 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. It's the announcement parents and children have been waiting for since before March break, which happened in April. When will children return to school and in-class learning rather than remote? At 1 o'clock this afternoon, the Premier, along with the Education Minister and the Minister of Health, are making an announcement most feel it will be concerning schools. Now, some have been pushing for schools to reopen based on the positive impact that would have on children's mental health. Ontario's stay-at-home order did lift today, but most other public health measures do remain in place. The order enacted in April asked you to only leave home for reasons deemed essential, like exercise or grocery shopping. As of today, that rule is no longer in effect, but other measures like a 5-person limit on outdoor gatherings and restrictions on in-person retail and other businesses do remain in effect. International Development Minister Karina Gould says Canada will double its dollar commitment to a global vaccine sharing alliance known as COVAX. It isn't committing to a specific donation in excess of vaccine doses, though, but Canada is doubling the financial commitment to COVAX now to $440 million. City News Time, 9:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Sam LaPrade filling in for Rob Snow. Are you looking for that political fix? We always are here, of course, on the Rob Snow Show. We're going to chat with Cam Holmstrom and Chris Day. Hello to you both.
Good morning. Hello there.
Hello. Cam Holmstrom, of course, consultant with Bluesky Strategy Group, and Chris Day, president of Winston Wilmont Consulting. There's certainly lots going on in the political world. Let's first talk about vaccines. Boy, there is a lot of frustration. Where would you rate our current government right now in terms of vaccines, Chris Day?
I think in terms of procurement, they've had the struggle to get things going, and it's been up to the provinces and the fabulous teams of health workers to actually get jabs and arms. What I am struggling with still is the federal leadership, or lack thereof, on communications and guidance with respect to immunizations. I think NACI has really struggled, and I think that was made very clear yesterday when essentially they came out with new guidance, and any communications has now been ceded back to the Public Health Agency of Canada, and the chair of NACI basically admitted that what was happening wasn't working. I think a lot of their chaotic communications was contributing to some degree of vaccine hesitancy, but certainly to confusion and stress for people who, like me, have received one dose of AstraZeneca and have no idea when my second dose is going to come and what that may be. So, very pleased to have received one dose, very pleased that Canadians are getting vaccinated with their first dose. But that's only half done and half the job, right? So we're only a quarter of the way there. And I think they really do need to look at what's happened to date and how they can improve things to get us over the finish line, which is still about 70% of the way.
Cam, do you have anything to add?
Well, I would just add that I agree with the whole piece on the communication piece. I think that's been a problem across the board for all levels. It's been just a mess, and it hasn't helped anything. It's really made the whole experience more difficult. The other thing I would add that when it comes to the downfalls, at least in Ontario, of our current system, has been the centralized booking system, which really isn't centralized in the many various ways people have gotten done. I know my own personal experience. I've gotten both shots. As an Indigenous person, I got on an emergency list here in my health unit, which was outside of that central list, and it got bumped around here, there, and everywhere. But I know from talking to people I know in my family and my life, everyone's kind of seemed to have gotten their shot a different ways. Some showed up at a pharmacy. Some were on a centralized list. Some were on a few lists. We're in, one town over, 2 towns over. It's like, the fact is that it's been a very cumbersome process, and I think that's helped build on the uncertainty with everybody and made it more difficult to deal with. And I wasn't expecting perfection. Lord knows, after more than a year, this perfection has long since gone out the window. But I think people are feeling better about it because, like Chris has had it, I've had it, others have had it. We're getting shots in arms. I think that just by itself has brought a certain level of positivity and optimism about, okay, you know what? This hasn't been great, but we're making progress. We're getting better.
I think you're right. I think we see a little bit of sunshine down the way. But to give you an example, my mom is 80 years old. She'll be 80. She's not 80 yet. She's going to give me heck for saying that. But she's going to be 80 in July. And so, of course, I'm helping her book her appointments, right? So I book her first appointment. Of course, it's at the Nepean Sportsplex, which is like 5 minutes from her house. Guess where her second appointment is? Any guesses?
Oh, I'm going to get away.
Winchester.
Oh, Winchester. Good.
So I had an option between Rockland or Winchester. So my 80-year-old mother is going to drive to Winchester to get her second shot. Is there a problem or what? I mean that is, and to even get that far, it was probably about my 15th attempt. So I just took it, right? I mean, I think families are just saying, we just want to get that second jab, to your point, Chris.
Yeah, I think, Sam, this is really a good problem to have, is that there's a lot of people that want to get the shot as quickly as possible. And there are a lot of avenues to go about doing that. To Cam's point, I don't think that we should be in a situation in our country today, in 2021, where there's a vaccine, Hunger Games going on. I think there has to be a look at, when we're through this, at how this can be done a lot more efficiently, a lot more rationally. But, frankly, I think we've been seeing this as a result of the stop-start in terms of distribution and supply, and that has a lot of downstream consequences, and I think that's what you're seeing.
It really is. And I think, at the end of the day, many of us think about, we really want to do a debrief on everything that's happened. Has the money been spent well? What was this vaccine rollout like? There's lots of different, we can even talk about We Charity. There was just so much that's gone on in the last 15 or 16 months that needs analyzing. But do you think Canadians have an appetite, Cam, for an inquiry? Do we want to spend our money that way?
I think Canadians do. I don't think our political leaders do. I'm going to be very blunt about it. This past week has been hard on my soul, just watching the levels to which government in general in this country are not willing to face up to hard facts because it may inconvenience their political reality. And that's across the board. The pockets at all their houses with this. I'd like to think that we come out of this, that yes, we do that kind of review, because that just makes sense. We've just gone through a once in a multi-generational event. We should figure out what the heck happened, what we need to do better, so that we're ready for the next time, because there always will be a next time. And I think that's part of the reason why, frankly, we got to the mess we were in to begin with. We weren't ready because we had let supplies fall down and plans become outdated. We hadn't been doing that kind of grunt work over the years, which was boring and laborious and may have seemed pointless because we hadn't been faced with such a crisis. But then when the moment when we needed it, it wasn't there. So to my mind, we have to do that work. That's how you make this, the next time this happens, not as bad, is by being prepared. And the only way you can be prepared is to, frankly, face up to the mistake, the good, the bad, and the very ugly, and take a full accounting of that.
So who leads that, Chris Day? Who's going to be taking charge? If the government takes charge, are Canadians going to trust the results?
That's a great question. And frankly, I think the entire legitimacy and relevance of such a review hinges on that very question, is how can you get credible, respected people who are apolitical, who also then have access to the details and the documents and everything you would need to actually assess and determine what could have been done better, what was done well, how can you build on successes and learn from mistakes. Mm-hmm. And for that, you need a really full accounting and full access. And to Cam's point, I'm not sure politically that's something that certain actors will want. And if other actors push it too hard or choose the people that don't have the credentials I've just described, it looks like a witch hunt, right? And so you have to land that really carefully. And it will be very interesting to see if such a body goes forward, what the constitution of that body will be and what powers they're given to get to the answers.
For sure. And when we think about political leader, I think anybody thinking about going into politics thinks, okay, I'm going to have a pandemic and then I'm going to have a crisis within my senior team in the military. That is really just a nightmare for anybody from a political perspective. Cam, how has the Prime Minister handled this military crisis?
Honestly, I think it's been terrible. I think it's been done horribly, just for the simple fact that this is a guy who, in theory, had an advantage coming into this. That he was the empathy guy. That he's the guy who kind of, like the old Bill Clinton saying, "I feel your pain," and I had that emotional connection, and was coming in talking about being a feminist and wanting to improve on these things. So he was coming in from a point of not only not really being cut off from all the past scandals, but being able to come in and say, "I've said I'm going to do things differently. Here we go. Here's my opportunity," and he's utterly failed. There's no other way to put it. And I'm hearing this from people in my life, people who I know who are veterans, people I know who are recent veterans who have served. And it's like, again, not expecting perfection, but expecting some actual action. And the fact that this government's answer was another report after a report came out just a few years ago that they did not act upon, to base on the same topic, this shows that they're treating this as a political problem, not an actual issue. And I think that's why I don't have confidence on the other topic we were talking about. We're seeing too much of this lately. It's like, there's some times where not everything is a political problem in this world. Sometimes you actually have to deal with the actual source of the issue. Because you know what? The people who step forward to serve this country, we can have debates about how we deploy our army, our armed forces, where they go, what they do. We can have the policy debates about that and agree and disagree. But I think what we all agree upon is that those people who step forward to serve deserve to be fully supported by their government, especially when things go wrong, and to ensure that things are corrected. And this is where this government's fallen down. Not only fallen down, they've gone to lengths to block the committees from trying to find out the answers on it, again, to cover their own hides. It frustrates me. The only part that's more frustrating is the fact that the main party pushing on the other side, the Conservatives, they also have their issues on this. So it's like, again, a pox on all their houses. These people deserve better, and there's no excuse for not doing better here, especially for this Prime Minister who promised to do better.
Well, I think about my own daughter. I mean, Chris, would I want my daughter going into the military? Would anybody want their child, female child, to be going into the military right now? I think it's a really, it's a question we have to ask, and it's a question that I'm hoping that is at the table for our political leaders too, because without attracting smart, strong females, we're going to be in a crisis at another point in this country.
Absolutely, and without people of Avery's caliber and character, and all of the young women and men out there who want to serve their country in that way, we owe them such a debt of gratitude for that service. We also have the fundamental responsibility to ensure that when they serve, they are protected. So I agree absolutely with Cam. This has been an Achilles heel for the government in so many ways. This is the latest manifestation of it, but symbolism over substance will get you in trouble every single time. And frankly, I think it's a problem for the Prime Minister. It's a problem for his Defense Minister, who, again, yesterday was completely unwilling or unable to answer very basic questions about why sexual assault was not removed from the military justice system as other national and militaries have done. The mantra was, this takes time. Well, they've had 6 years, right? So they've had 2 reports now. There is, time's up, and it really is important that substantial change happen now because it's long overdue.
Absolutely. And time is not up with you two. We're going to come back with Cam Holmstrom, of course, consultant with Bluesky Strategy Group, and Chris Day, president of Winston Wilmont Consulting. Stay with us here on City News.
The food cupboard started about 25 years ago. Again, it was a very small operation in the basement of a church. And we have been expanding to the point where we needed to have a new facility. So in discussion with the city of Ottawa, and Jan Harder, the local representative here, we came to this location, which is about 2,000 square feet, located in the Walter Baker Center. We've been here for about 2 years, and it is much better. It gives us a much broader opportunity to serve our clients better. It's a fairly affluent community in Barrhaven, so you wouldn't think that people would really need to have a food bank or a food cupboard. But people sometimes have a temporary loss of their job, maybe new immigrants or refugees to the community. Maybe there's been an injury in the family or something like a pandemic that causes people to run short of food during their monthly requirements. So we offer any clients who come and live in our catchment area the opportunity to pick up an order of food every 3 or 4 weeks. The need varies from time to time. We have expanded our offering to include quite a few perishables, eggs, milk, cheese, yogurt, vegetables, fruit. But people I think know that we need cans of beans and stuff as well too. One thing that we're consistently short of sometimes is personal hygiene products. You go to the grocery store, you buy your toothpaste and you buy your deodorant and shampoo there. People don't automatically think that to donate those kinds of things to a food cupboard. So we end up buying quite a few of those things from time to time. The pandemic has affected us like it has everybody. Initially, we had to stop the grocery store food donations so that we didn't have any risk of contamination and to have a significant number of volunteer work to be done in our facility. We have a storefront, so it's like a mini grocery store where you take a cart and you go around and pick out the things that you want. That doesn't work during the pandemic to maintain social distancing and so on. So what we have now is our clients can come in one at a time, they make an appointment, they stand behind a line, and they direct our volunteer to, I'd like Kellogg's cornflakes rather than Harvest Crunch, to pick the food that they would like off the shelves according to the allocation, depending on the size of their family. And then they take it out, load it into their vehicle or whatever, bring back the cart, we disinfect everything, and prepare for the next client. We are very blessed here in Barrhaven. We're a totally volunteer organization. So if you give a dollar to us, it goes to purchasing food or to provide some service to our clients.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
Any efforts to repair the terrible wrongs done by residential schools can only happen if every order of government takes action alongside Indigenous peoples. This is all of Canada's responsibility as we walk together on the path of reconciliation.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau speaking at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities on the horrific discovery in Kamloops, BC last week. 215 children, of course, the remains found at a residential school. I'm speaking with Chris Day and Cam Holmstrom. Gentlemen, I can't even tell you, this has absolutely rocked this country. Cam, what are your initial thoughts, and how did you hear the news?
Well, I heard it, the most recent piece of it, I heard it in the media when it came out, but to be honest, this was out there known. During the whole Truth and Reconciliation process, the community in that area came forward and said this was there, and they were ignored. And for a lot of us who have family, friends, loved ones who went through the schools, either through the residential schools or the day schools, this is extremely painful. And I know it takes me back to some of my hardest days on Parliament Hill when dealing with these issues and watching governments just kind of saying pretty words and not backing it up with a lick of action. And this is when I was talking earlier about why my faith that our political leaders are going to do the right thing is so down. This is it. Is that this is another moment where we get thoughts and prayers and beautiful words and almost invariably the action doesn't come. And this is one of the hardest truths that this country has to face up to. It was genocide, and anywhere else in the world, 215 children found in a unmarked mass grave. If that were in Myanmar, if that were in South Africa, if that were in Chile, that would be genocide. There's no qualifying it. And that's why so many of us in the Indigenous community were so upset when it was qualified or tried to be qualified by some people. I want to hope that this becomes the moment that shakes Canadians out of this slumber and wants us to do better. But from seeing some of the reactions over the last 24 or 48 hours, I'm not hopeful, because this is a truth that is politically inconvenient for some people to want to talk about and actually deal with. And until people can get over that, you can't have reconciliation. Because the one thing that's clear is that for these families, they've never had that closure of not knowing what happened to their child or to their brother or sister or cousin, or they did not know what happened to them, and they've never had closure. And how can you reconcile with a state who's denying you the most basic and needed closure possible on something like that? And only our governments can bring that about. So I hope that they're willing for once, but I'm not as naive to think that they're actually going to do it.
Thank you, Cam. I really appreciate your words. Chris Day, when we think about the word genocide, why are so many people nervous to use that term when it comes to these 215 children?
Well, I mean, it's more than 215.
Of course.
Sadly. And we know of 215 in Kamloops. Horrific, awful, deeply traumatizing for survivors, families, and to think that these horror shops were operating up until the 1990s, our lifetimes in this country, makes me absolutely sick. But to know that there could be, as Murray Sinclair, the former chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, said yesterday, and again this morning, that there could be up to 25,000 children in this country that have suffered the exact same fates, is something that I hope is a moment of reckoning, a moment of reflection, and will prompt moments of real action and meaningful action. To Cam's point, the time for words and thoughts and prayers, etc., is long gone, and we owe it to victims and ourselves, frankly, as a country, to find and honor each and every victim, to know them, to reconcile with that history, to hold those responsible for account, and really to ensure that we provide the supports to deal with the intergenerational trauma that's out there, and that's very real, but also to ensure that there is a way of dealing with this as a country that doesn't doom us to repeat it, and also allows us to move forward in that spirit of reconciliation that's so important. But to Cam's point, I mean, we have the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. A lot of those recommendations have yet to be acted upon in any way, and some not meaningfully. So I think we have a lot of work to do to address what we know is out there, and we have work to do to find answers, as tough as those are going to be, to the questions that we made that are still open.
We know, Cam, that an NDP MPP, Saul Mamakwe, is asking for the search in Ontario here, particularly at the residential schools, for that to be Indigenous-led. How important is this piece for Canadians?
It's extremely important. Again, it's coming back to, let's put it this way. I share that view of Saul Mamakwe because, no offense, I don't trust the government to do this right. I don't. We're talking about we don't know exactly what we're going to find, but we don't necessarily trust the government when they find it, to do it properly and deal with respect, because history has taught us otherwise. And the fact that the government's fought so hard to stop this from happening, yes, there's a lack of trust there that's completely warranted. But this has to happen. Like I tell this story. Like I'm from Kenora, and my old high school, I was on the soccer team, and we didn't have access to our soccer field because they were building a new school on it, and we would go to about a kilometer down the road to this open field where the Grand Council of Treaty 3 had their offices, and a big open field, an old swing set there. Didn't think much of it. That's where we practiced for a couple of years. A few years after that, after I was in high school, stone with a marker was put on the property, because that was the property of the Celia Jeffrey Residential School, the same school that Shawnee Wenjack had ran away from. And to this day, we knew there were residential schools there, but no one talked about it. No one talked about the history. No one talked about any of it. And the idea that I was playing a kid's game on top of what could have been some poor child's unmarked grave sickens me to this day. And just to think that how many communities around this country, life has gone on where these properties once stood, and the things that have happened in those places and how they've gone unresolved, unmarked. It makes me sick. Yet that's where we're at. And we need answers to that. So at this point, process absolutely matters. And if that's how it's going to help us get proper closure, so be it. I hope government follows that recommendation, because it's not enough to just get this done. It has to be done right.
You have both been so incredibly thoughtful in your words today, and I really value your opinions and really appreciate your time, both of you. Cam Holmstrom, consultant, Bluesky Strategy Group, and of course, Chris Day, President, Winston Wilmont Consulting. Thank you both.
Thank you, Sam. Take care. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. We have lots to talk about, and guess what? It is your time. Coming up after the 10 o'clock news, we will open the phone lines. There is so much to talk about. Do you want to talk about the 215 children, their remains found in Kamloops? Do you want to talk about what you want the government to do? The time is up. We need to absolutely address this very, very quickly. Do you want to talk about vaccines? Do you want to talk about gun violence? You know what? Rob's away. We're going to talk about whatever we want to talk about today. I'm Sam LaPrade. This is City News.
KYWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 101.1 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, June 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 19 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. We're getting the new numbers of daily COVID infections from the province. 733 new cases today. 41 of these are in Ottawa. 3 are in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. There is 1 each in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and Renfrew County. Now, Ontario's stay-at-home order has just come to an end, but you still can't head to a patio for a pint or shop for some new shoes just yet. City News reporter Kevin Meisner with more on a plea from a major business group to open up sooner rather than later.
Ontario is no longer under a stay-at-home order, but nothing really changes. The padlock on the province's businesses still in place, outdoor gatherings still limited to 5 people. Dan Kelly with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business tells me Ontario is one of the most locked-down jurisdictions in Canada. He's calling on the Premier to lift some of those restrictions right now.
Things that perhaps should never have been closed in the first place. For goodness sakes, Alberta will be fully open around the same time that someone in Ontario can start to get a haircut.
Vaccination rates are ahead of what the province requires for stage 1 of reopening, which would allow for patio dining and limited in-store shopping. But the start date is June 14th, and salon and barber shops can't open until 21 days later. Kelly says he has been given signals the province may announce an earlier start to stage 1 this Friday. Kevin Meisner, Queen's Park.
Well, the big question these days, schools. Now, we'll have more on that in a moment, whether or not they will reopen before the end of the academic year. But first, your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Plenty of sunshine for the area today. A warm high with a southwest wind, the high 28 degrees. Tonight, we'll cloud over, rain for the overnight hours, 15 for the low. And tomorrow, cooler with light rain in the morning, showers for the afternoon. Tomorrow, the high 21. For today, the high 28.
And right now in both Ottawa and Smiths Falls, it's 19 degrees. Now, we are expecting the decision on whether to reopen schools in Ontario before the end of the academic year this afternoon. The Premier, along with the Health and the Education Ministers, will be briefing the media at 1 o'clock. Now, City News has learned the decision is leaning toward remaining closed, but the final decision was yet to be made. Now, there is opposition to that idea, including an Ottawa ICU doctor who wants schools reopened for children's mental well-being. Here's City News reporter Jason White.
In the video, recorded in the doctor's office, he says school closures speak loudly and clearly to the rest of the world.
Right now, we're saying we're not going to prioritize the kids. And that's what it means to be in Ontario right now.
Ottawa ICU Dr. Quado Karamantang says frontline healthcare workers have been going full tilt, driven by a desire to help people. But he says seeing the effects of school closures makes that harder.
And all that hustle that we're doing, and this is what's coming out of it. This is the return.
The Premier solicited advice from medical experts last week, but still no announcement on whether Ontario students will finish the school year at home or in class. Jason White, City News.
City News time, 10:03. A couple of federal ministers responsible for government Indigenous policy providing an update this hour on the search for more burial sites at former residential schools. Indigenous Service Minister Mark Miller and Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Carolyn Bennett commenting as there are more calls to look for mass burial sites. Now, Miller says any moves will be directed to the government by individual communities. Those communities have asked the federal government to give them space, at least for the time being. Each community, though, will get an information package today on how to access funds in previous funding announcements to search sites of former residential schools. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
The phone lines are definitely open. I'm Sam LaPrade filling in for Rob Snow. We want to hear from you. There is no shortage of things to talk about. Everything from vaccines to school to, of course, the tragedy in Kamloops, BC. There are lots and lots to talk about. Gun violence. Are you living in the Alta Vista area? Are you nervous about what's happened. A number of other communities as well. We saw Baseline and Iris as well have some violence over the weekend. So are you nervous about crime in this city? Are you nervous about gun violence in broad daylight? In broad daylight. This is happening in the city of Ottawa. It is shocking to many people. But like we heard from Inspector Carl Cartright a little bit earlier from Ottawa Police Services, that there are gangs in this city. There is organized crime in this city. So in many ways, we shouldn't be surprised. But on a sunny Friday night, to have two men killed in the parking lot, basically, of a Shoppers Drug Mart on Alta Vista is absolutely tragic. So I'm hoping that you also want to talk about these things. We want to hear from you. Gun violence, vaccines. Are you having a hard time, getting a vaccine appointment? I've got my first jab of AstraZeneca, would love a second jab. I'm sure I'm not alone. Are you concerned about what you're hearing from the federal government? Are you concerned what you're hearing from NACI in terms of, get a second AstraZeneca? You can mix your AstraZeneca. Lots of different areas there that we want to talk about. I want to talk about schools, and so does Derek from Ottawa. Hi, Derek. Derek, I understand you want to talk about schools today.
I am sick and tired of Doug Ford, quite honestly. I voted Conservative all my life, and now we're not opening the schools up. I mean, I have 8 kids, okay? Now, not all of them are school age, fair enough, but nonetheless, we've been doing this for, a month and a half now, and if Doug Ford wants to keep the schools closed, he can come teach my kids every day. How about that?
Can I just stop right here for a second and say, Derek, you have 8 children. You are now my hero.
Not children. Some of them are grown up. But yeah, we have a lot of kids. But it's neither here nor there. I mean, you have one kid, you have 2 kids. They've been at home isolated for, what is it now, 6, 7, 8 weeks? I don't know. I've lose track now. And they don't open up. I mean, the cases are below 1,000. His big motto was open for business, and he closes everything down again and again and again. It's time, and then I voted Conservative all my life. In the next election, we need another alternative. We need more, back in the day, Mulroney became a Liberal and the Reform Party got started. We may as well start a new party in Ontario and vote out Doug Ford.
Are you worried about mental health for the children, or is it more that they've just got routine again?
It's a whole bunch of things. Yeah, mental health is part of it. I mean, kids need to be kids. They have to play with other kids and stuff. They have to have actual real-life social action. I mean, they shouldn't be glued to a screen, all day long, with this online learning. I mean, it's great, and they're trying to do the best they can, but it's not the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's just not the same, and he doesn't care. I mean, his priority was opening golf courses because Doug Ford has no kids that are school age now, so he doesn't care.
So you've got 30 seconds, and the Premier is on the phone, and you have 30 seconds to say something to him. How do you use your 30 seconds?
Basically, it's time to open things up. It's time to care about the kids. It's time, don't give us this, we're doing it for the kids' safety, because their safety is not at risk. I mean, at the bare minimum, when you look at the cases, I mean, your announcement during the news was just, there's one, my kids happen to go to school in the Lanark County area. There's one case in all of Lanark County. One case. I mean, the whole numbers are in the Toronto area. Open it up in zones.
Right. So you're hoping, obviously, let's say Lanark opens, but zones that have a lot of higher cases, they would remain closed.
I mean, I don't think so. Personally, I think it's better for the kids because I know the factors that affect the kids. I think it's better to open them up. I mean, they're at low risk of COVID anyhow. I mean, if you look at the stats, kids don't die from COVID. It doesn't happen.
Let me ask you this, Derek. Do you think it's pressure from the teachers' unions?
I have no idea, but I just don't think they know what they're doing. I mean, when you lump them all together as quote, quote, experts, I mean, at the beginning they say don't wear a mask, and then they say wear a mask, and then, I think Trudeau came on and said, hey, take the first vaccine you're offered, and now there's a big kerfuffle because AstraZeneca is dangerous and stuff. I don't think they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. It is very, very frustrating for sure.
But what we do know is that keeping kids out of school is not good. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Really appreciate your call today, and certainly appreciate your point of view as a parent for sure, Derek. Thank you so much for calling.
Off my chest. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And if you have something you want to get off your chest, maybe it's you're trying to book your vaccine for your 80-year-old mother like I was. Maybe you're thinking about your kids. I as well have a 13-year-old daughter, and I was hoping she was going to head back to school. City News, of course, is going to be staying on the breaking news from Queen's Park. We're expecting to hear some news around 1 o'clock today. Mark Day and Sarah Buchan will make sure you absolutely hear the latest news when they hear it, so that you can plan for your family. Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges we know about in terms of schools is it's really, really hard to plan as a parent. It's very, very hard to work from home, right? There's, requests for goldfish crackers and, come and look at my art project and all of those things, which is great and great parts of being a parent, but it's also hard to be an employee. It's very, very challenging for parents right now. Are you a parent? Are you tired? Are you frustrated? Are you a grandparent? Because I would love to hear from you as well. I know grandparents, certainly my mom has helped out during this time as much as she can safely. Are you a grandparent? Are you nervous about the kids not going back? Or are you happy to hear that potentially they won't be going back? We'll hear that final decision today from Education Minister Stephen Lecce and, of course, Premier Doug Ford a little bit later today. So we're going to be watching that for you. We wanted to talk to Steve in Lanark about vaccines. Hi, Steve.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
Good. We talked yesterday, and I brought up the question about having these clinics run 24/7 instead of 9 to 5. You think that's going to be done?
I can't see it, to be honest. I think they would have done that, but that's just my own personal opinion, Steve. What do I know? I'm just a radio host. But,
I understand that.
But in terms of
you're reaching out to the world there, and people are listening, right?
Absolutely. Well, we're certainly hoping they're listening to City News. I know you do, and I appreciate it. I think probably from the perspective of, I think they would have done that from the beginning if they would have. But you made a really good point yesterday, Steve. I actually thought about it after the show, and you make a really good point about people working shift work.
They just can't get squeezed in to get their shot, and I imagine they're a little frustrated about it with OHIP and stuff. They should be able to set something up that they could run 24/7 someplace, and people could show up and get it done if they want to get it done. I haven't got it done. It's been out there for 15 months now, right? This COVID crap, and I'm healthy.
Are you trying to book your vaccine? Are you anxious?
No, I'm not even interested in getting it.
Oh, you're not going to get it. Okay.
Well, I listen to the side effects and everything else. There's complications with that. My dad got it, and he had some kind of small side effects of it. But if it's going to get you, it's going to get you, right? But I'm not interested in even getting it. I'm healthy and stuff, and I'm 65 years old, and I go all the time. I work for the Ministry of Natural Resources. I'm in the bush all the time, and I just don't believe in getting it. So I don't see it out in the bush.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting.
I think running around with COVID. The fox, the coyotes are not running around with COVID, but just around. It seems to be around the seniors and stuff in the old age homes where there's massive people. I'm just not interested in getting it myself. So.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their own personal preference. I think a lot of people do get it for their family members, right, to protect their family members as well. So that's another big reason. Yeah, absolutely.
But this thing now with people today, you can't get a couple of feet away from a person. We used to spit on each other in years, from a year ago, and nobody was getting COVID then, but now we can't even get close enough to even talk to a person. You can't hug a person, type thing, or shake a hand.
Were you speaking moistly to people, Steve?
Pardon me?
You were speaking moistly to people?
Well, yeah, exactly, yeah. So, you can't, people get so up about this, stand back and stand on this dot and go over that dot and go over here. You go to the beer store here in Smith Falls, you got to stand on one dot and move to the next dot and move to the next dot, and we got to line up the rest of our lives. That's the way I look at it. We're going to have to line up the rest of our lives.
I do worry about that, too. I worry about that from lots of different perspectives. I worry about that from our children's perspectives as well.
Sure, yeah. I see the school thing. Even though the kids, they're missing some time, they're still going to learn. You learn every day, right? You learn something new every day. I do anyway. I don't know about everybody else. But the kids are going to miss a little bit of time, so what? They're going to learn.
Yeah, it's frustrating to work from home and try to have, my daughter's 13, but, I think about my friend who's got, someone in senior kindergarten, he's got another one in grade 3, to try and manage that and be an employee at home. It's very hard.
You're schooling likely at home. You're teaching your daughter, right, to do things.
Of course.
And she's likely learning more from you than she is from some teacher.
Absolutely.
Let's go up to the Catholic thing here with the kids and stuff that happened there. I think all these Catholic organizations should be investigated based on what took place out there.
Well, and I think it's a really important point that it's just not Catholic churches, right? We know that a number of other churches were involved, but
right?
But I get your point that it should definitely be an inquiry for sure. Steve, really appreciate it.
County, there could be the same thing. There could be 50 people buried over in Maberly or, that type of thing. Who knows, So if they discovered that out west, it could be all around.
Well, and that's...
You never know. Hopefully it ain't.
And of course, many people are calling for the review at every single school to see if there are children buried on site at those schools, which is heartbreaking. We know we've heard various numbers that potentially it is, and it's just every single life lost is a heartache. So thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate your time.
Okay, well, thank you very much. You have a great day, okay?
You too, Steve. Take care. We wanted to speak with Armand about schools. Hi, Armand.
Hi again. I'm a little still upset about when I spoke to you about the closing of the schools when we first found out about, well, technically speaking, found out about it. But I have a problem. Why can't this guy in Toronto, whatever he wants to be called, go by region? You know, like there are some parts in Ontario got 0, 0, 0, 0. And they're still at home. Like, come on, give us a break here, you know?
Yeah, it is very, very frustrating for sure, Armand. I know we haven't heard officially from the province, but the rumors are we certainly have heard multiple very important resources for our sources are telling us that the province is going to keep schools closed for in-person learning, but we have not had that confirmed yet. But it is very, very frustrating, Armand. I really appreciate the call today. We have to take a quick break, but we do want to hear from you. Call us at 613-750-1310 here on City News.
When it came to opening the business, because I was so young, there was a lot that I didn't know about management, financial management, management of people, all around management, I think is the word that I always come back to. I think that I always had a passion and I knew that I wanted to create a space for people to get their hair done, but I had no idea, even having studied business management, what it really took to open a business as well as sustain a successful business. So in 2014, I was actually working with Angela Sutcliffe. She was my business coach at the time, and she was like, what's your niche? Like, what separates you from other salons? And when we started to really dig, it was the curls. It was the fact that we work with all curl types, curly, kinky, wavy, coily, which is how we identify our curl types. And then you have straight hair as well, of course. But you know, more than 70% of the world has some sort of curl pattern to their hair. And we just realized that that was not being addressed. It wasn't something we learned about in school. So I went to the States and I traveled all over to kind of gain the information that I have now to be able to share it with our clients and as well as with other stylists. So in March when it came, I thought it was gonna last, a week, 2 weeks, I think it started off at 2 weeks. And I was like, cool, I have 2 weeks to just relax, that's fine. So I was actually in a position where I was not happy, so to say, but I was a little bit happy, to be honest, just because of what I was experiencing personally. Now, when that extension started to happen, it was not a great feeling. It was very uncomfortable not knowing how I was going to support myself financially. So I'm so excited about the Academy. It's something that I started and I launched it during the pandemic. So I've been teaching for a number of years. I've been educating for a number of years. I educated at Algonquin. I've educated at Versailles Hair Academy. And I've also educated in my own space, in this space and my old space up on Green Bank. And so it was just a continuum of what, I've been doing for these years. When we have a client in our chair, it's not just about making your hair look great. It's about how do you go home and take what we've just taught you and emulate that. So now with a world where people want to quote unquote be diverse and inclusive, what does that really look like in a salon setting? And for me, it looks like being able to invite any curl type, any hair type really, because I can take care of straight hair types just as well as, I can take care of curls. And we cater to all curl types regardless of what you look like on the outside, we got you.
Time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
We don't want you to be shy. We want you to call in 613-750-1310. I'm Sam LaPrade filling in for Rob Snow. I want to talk about anything you want to talk about. Of course, household name Theresa Tam has certainly shared many important words for us as Canadians regarding vaccines. We're going to hear from her now.
People who received a first dose of AstraZeneca Covishield vaccine may receive either AstraZeneca or Covishield vaccine or an mRNA, so Pfizer, BioNTech, or Moderna vaccine for their second dose, unless contraindicated.
Really important to understand how frustrated Canadians are. Dr. Theresa Tam, of course, also talking about the AstraZeneca dose.
The interchangeability of vaccines means that you can receive one vaccine product for your first dose and safely receive a different vaccine for your second dose to complete your 2-dose vaccine series for optimal protection from COVID-19.
I don't know about you, but I've received the AstraZeneca dose, and I'm always looking for information on this. Of course, Theresa Tam, Dr. Theresa Tam, talking about what this means for Canadians who's received the AstraZeneca shot.
Try and use the same vaccine for the mRNA for the second dose. But if you can't find it or you don't know what someone had, whether it was Pfizer or Moderna for the first dose, then another mRNA vaccine can be considered.
We're hearing, of course, lots of Canadians confused, as we said. She addresses the concern.
We will get more data. And I think, as we see, as Dr. New has said, when NACI recommended the initial interval recommendation, people were understandably had lots of questions. But we know that we have to monitor this on an ongoing basis.
We absolutely do have to monitor it on an ongoing basis. We look to Dr. Tam and other public health officials for those answers. It has been confusing. Do you find it confusing? Are you frustrated? Are you still searching for your first dose? Are you looking for that first jab in the arm to say, you're on the vaccine train? Are you still looking for that? Are you concerned about booking a second dose? Maybe you're like me, you're team AstraZeneca and you're looking for that second one. Lots of confusion there, certainly. Are you concerned about schools? We know we're watching Queen's Park very, very closely today. We understand there's going to be an announcement out of Queen's Park today at 1 o'clock or thereabouts. We know Premier Ford tends to be a little bit late, but we will be watching that. Our team here at City News, Sarah Buchan and Mark Day, will be following that for you and bring you the absolute most up-to-date news there. Are you thinking, as we all are, about the 215 children who have been discovered, their remains in Kamloops, BC, at an Indigenous residential school? It is really heartbreaking. We've talked about it a lot this week, but I want to talk about it more because the only thing that is going to have change in this country is to have these tough conversations. What do you want to talk about? I understand Alec from Avonmore wants to talk about schools. Hi, Alec.
Yeah, say I got cut off yesterday there a little short, but no, I was saying my little brother, he's in the 12th grade, and I just finished college actually. Mm-hmm. Just the quality of education. It's not about the kids being in or out of school, but the quality of education that's being taught online is, compared to when I was in high school, just brutal. Like, there's no tests. I mean, hell, if a kid wants, they can call up their best buddy on the phone and do the test together. So, I mean, you got to think long-term future here, how the kids are actually, what they're actually learning.
Are you concerned, Alec, about your little brother, maybe then what he does next? Is he going to be fully prepared for either college or university or maybe another path?
And that's what I'm worried about. Like, my brother's a smart guy, and you look at it, it's, like, when I was in college, and I was in class all through high school, and even I got my arse kind of whooped a little bit when I was there, and I finished college as well online, and that was no cakewalk trying to learn engineering yourself. I mean,
absolutely
brutal. And
absolutely. Well, I really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much, Alec, for calling in. We want to hear from you. Are you like Alec? Do you have maybe a grade 12 student in your life? Are you a grade 12 student? I would love to talk to you to talk about what this year's been like for you, how you're going to sort of end your school year. I would love to speak with you. I'd also love to speak with somebody that maybe graduated from grade 12 last year and what that was like to transition into college or into university. How hard was that for you? I know there's lots of frustrated parents out there, and I know there's lots of frustrated teachers. I have the utmost respect for teachers. It is absolutely not a job I could do, and I certainly learned that during this pandemic. I am no good at grade 8 math, just so we're clear. Thank heavens I don't need to do that here while I'm working at City News, do any grade 8 math, but it certainly is not a topic I'm very good at. We wanted to speak with Adrian in Smiths Falls. Hi, Adrian.
Hi.
Adrian, I understand you wanted to speak about the genocide, the tragedy, the discovery of the 215 children in Kamloops.
Yeah, so this is not new information, and I'm glad that people are taking notice, but Europeans have been killing natives for 200 years.
Mm-hmm.
And there's mass grave sites, I imagine, all over North America.
Yeah, it is very tragic.
Now we're taking notice.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it was the worst kept secret, and it was just a matter of who was going to take action. And I think we've heard that over and over again. And we look back at the Truth and Reconciliation report, and we know that was something that was very, very prominent in that report, and it's taken too many years.
Right, and the fact that residential schools were still going on during modern Canadian society is really pathetic.
It is.
And even under Trudeau's father, which when he comes out here and says his spiel, a bunch of crap, his father was part of the whole thing. He had control over that.
It is.
Didn't do anything then.
It is
now
tragic.
Trudeau wants to say sorry for it.
It is absolutely tragic. Adrian, I'm so glad you've called. We've got a bit of a rough line. I encourage you to call back again and share your thoughts. That's Adrian from Smiths Falls sharing on the, of course, tragedy in Kamloops. And I think it's a really good point. There was certainly not a grave site at my school. I'm sure there was not a grave site at your school. And it's really, really crucial that we think about every single residential school. We know there's upwards of 130 in this country, that every single one of them has this same inquiry, the same opportunity to search those grounds for those mass graves. We know that only 51 children were recognized as deceased at that residential school, but when in fact the remains, the bodies of 215 have been found. When we come back, we want to hear from you. We have another half an hour to talk to you, and we definitely want to do that. Do you want to talk about the military? Has that got you talking to your friends and family? If you want to talk about the crisis in the military, if you want to talk about vaccines, gun violence, I'm up for any topic today. Call us at City News 613-750-1310.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, June 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 22 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 21. And here's what's making news this hour. The province releasing daily figures showing 733 new cases of COVID-19 today. 41 of these new cases are in Ottawa, 3 in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. There's 1 each in Renfrew and Leeds-Grenville-Lanark. Now, the new cases come from just over 31,800 tests. The province also says there were 25 more deaths. Decision on schools and whether they reopen to in-class learning before the end of the academic year apparently being made this afternoon at 1 o'clock. Now, City News has learned the Premier is leaning toward keeping them closed, but the final decision had yet to be made. There are groups and individuals, though, who say getting children back into the buildings would be crucial for their mental well-being. Stay with City News for more on this developing story. Again, the media briefing coming this afternoon at 1. Information is being sent to all Indigenous communities today outlining the process to access money from a fund that helps people find missing loved ones. Calls are growing for examinations of all residential school properties across Canada to search for graves of missing children after 215 were discovered in Kamloops. Crown Indigenous Affairs Minister Carolyn Bennett also says Catholics should be pressuring their church to do the right thing and apologize for the part it played in the residential school program. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Okay, we want to hear from you. It is the Talk Back Hour on the Rob Snow Show. I'm Sam LaPrade filling in, and I want to talk about everything that you're talking about, and you might be thinking about a little football. Let's hear what's happening in Edmonton.
No doubt about it. 100%. We definitely did the right thing. It was needed. It was probably a few years overdue, to be honest. But I'm glad that we're where we are now. But no doubt we made the right decision.
And that decision, of course, is to name the CFL team in Edmonton the Edmonton Elks.
We chose it for a lot of reasons. We liked how it sounded. Frankly, it's more inclusive than the word elk. And I think the inclusion around the plurality of it was a key mechanism for us.
And we know, of course, they've dropped the name Eskimos. It certainly is a decision that came amid lots of different pressures around sports teams to drop names racist or stereotypical names. And we know that there were a few other options out there for Edmonton.
Elks continued to rise to the top. It was number one with our players. It was number one with our coaches. It was number one with our fans. And regardless of age category, socioeconomic background, where you lived within this community, Elks continue to rise to that number one or number two position.
Well, who's going to be number one or number two in the CFL this year is the question, of course. Will they play? We hope they're going to play this August. I know that last week you were introduced to someone very special to our team here at City News, and I get to work with him for the very first time today, and that's the incredible Dave Tripp.
Hey, hey.
Hey, hey. So let's talk about the CFL and, of course, Edmonton. What do you think about the new name?
I think it's fantastic. I think it's a long time coming. I think the name fits really well, fits with the color scheme. I mean, why not?
It does.
I think it's a great move.
You know, when we made the change, of course, here in Ottawa from the Ottawa Rough Riders to the Ottawa Red Blacks, I still find myself calling them the Ottawa Rough Riders. And it's really taken me a long time to sort of make that change. So we hope the people of Edmonton pick up that Edmonton Elks name and really wear it with pride.
Absolutely.
It's going to be exciting to see the CFL start up again. We're hearing August. What's your gut tell you, Dave? Do you think it's going to happen?
I'm hopeful. I think that they kind of have to make it happen this year. I feel like the league's going to do everything in their power. I mean, obviously, a lost season is not the kind of thing you can do 2 years in a row when you're in the financial situation that the CFL is in. So I think that it's best for everyone if they can make something work. And given the vaccination rates and everything else, I think that it's it's looking a lot more doable than it was last year.
Okay, so the Red Blacks, let's say in our dreams, they say tickets have gone on sale. Are you buying a ticket?
Oh, I'd buy a ticket for sure. Honestly, anybody who's selling tickets for a sporting event right now, I'd be among the first in line in Ottawa to do that, because live sports is one of the things that I miss the most. So.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. I think especially here in Ottawa, and I once again, I haven't lived in any other city, but I think especially here in Ottawa, there's something about a Red Blacks game that even if you're not the biggest football fan, it's just the thing to do, right?
Also, like an outdoor venue, I think for a lot of people, the first big event, I think that's a perfect scenario for it because you're outdoors. I'm sure that they'll take the seating very responsibly, the way that you've seen in the NBA playoffs and some of the NHL playoff games. I just think we're getting closer to that time where it's going to be acceptable for a lot more people to do.
Can I tell you a secret?
Sure.
So I have tickets to see Genesis in Toronto.
Oh, Genesis.
On November the 25th. I'm so excited.
Wow.
And they're only filling, I think the capacity, they reduced it down to 13,000. And of course, the capacity would be much more than that.
Sure.
And tickets went on sale, and I don't think there's any tickets left. I think they sold out. But it was the buzz of buying those tickets for the first time, thinking, and it's in November, so it's a long time away. But it was the buzz of even thinking about going to a venue, even thinking about that opportunity to see live music and to be with people again would be pretty amazing. And so I'm looking forward to that. We want to hear from you. Are you looking forward to going to a Red Blacks game? Seeing our boys take the field and seeing the CFL start up again. I'm sure you missed it like I did in 2020. What are you missing? Are you looking forward to your first concert? If your favorite band was coming, would you buy tickets? Would you fork out the money and hope for the best that they're going to actually play? We're going to go to George in Ottawa. Hi, George. Nope, George isn't there. George got a little
George
shy?
was congratulating me on being back at the radio.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Appreciate it, George.
And I got to tell you, I think that's really nice, Dave. I think, the radio community is so small, and listeners get attached not only to hosts, but to great producers like yourself.
And it's been a few months since I was working in radio, but a lot of people have reached out, and I have to say that means a lot.
It absolutely does.
Very sweet.
There's a real connection, I think, and I think the role of someone like Dave or like David Smith, our producer, regularly. David's taken a couple days off, and of course, Dave Tripp has stepped into his position. I think that role, listeners may not understand how crucial the role of a producer is. It really is, your partner in this, and I really rely on Dave and David, of course, when David's here.
Sure.
And to make sure those guests are lined up, you're following that breaking news, and you're really obviously a vital part of the show.
Well, thank you. And I'm so glad to be a part of it.
It's great seeing you through that window, which is great. And we're so happy that you're here. Well, let's talk a little bit about vaccines. You're a young guy. Do you have your first jab yet?
I do. My wife's pregnant, so I got bumped up the list. Apparently, I qualify as her caregiver, even though everyone knows that's met her, that she's my caregiver. So
Right.
I was able to get a Pfizer vaccine, and I have my second appointment booked.
So you're Team Pfizer. How long away was your second appointment?
It was originally 3 months. For starters, I'm Team anything that they give me. I would happily take an AstraZeneca vaccine. I know some people aren't very excited about that, but my mother-in-law and father-in-law both have those, and they'll be getting their second dose of whatever they can. As far as I'm concerned, if they have, as long as I can get both of my shots before my child is born, I'm thrilled. Baby's due in October, second dose is booked for August. So
excellent.
That's plenty for me. I don't want to get in anybody else's way that needs it more than I do.
So let me ask you this. Are pregnant women receiving the vaccine?
Yeah, they're viewed as high risk. So that's why she had hers. And then a few days later, I got my appointment. So
excellent.
And as long as my wife's attitude was she'll follow her doctor's advice, and the doctor was like 100% get a vaccine. So And that was enough for us.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there becomes a point in time where you just have to rely on the science and what the doctors are saying. And,
that's right.
And I think it's a really important piece for sure. And when we think about vaccines, we think about not only how difficult they've been to find, but we also think forward. What will 2022 look like? What's that going to look like in terms of vaccines, and how long will this continue? And when will children under 12 qualify for vaccines, or will they? I mean, there's lots of different questions about that. My daughter, as I've mentioned a number of times, is 13, so she's scheduled to have it sort of mid-June. But what's really interesting about that is children in grades 7 and 8 are also qualified for something called the HPV vaccine.
Yep.
So because she didn't get it because of, the way school went in the last couple of years, she was actually booked to get it in mid-June. And Ottawa Public Health has canceled all of those vaccines. So those grade 7 and 8 vaccines for HPV have been canceled in light of the fact children 12 and up can now receive the COVID vaccine. So there's going to be some catch up there for Ottawa Public Health in terms of what they can do and make sure that no child falls through the crack. And I understand from Ottawa Public Health, David Smith, of course, our other producer, was doing some research on this, and Ottawa Public Health said they're going to take it right into grade 9 to ensure no one falls through the crack and ensures that they receive that vaccine as well, which is obviously very important for parents.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only imagine. My brother has 4 kids. One of them actually did get his HPV vaccine before that announcement had happened. So his COVID vaccine got delayed because you have to wait a certain amount of time between shots. So
there you go.
It's just strange that you brought that up because, everything's happening now. I mean, I've got 2 nephews that are under the age of 18 that are waiting for their vaccines, their first doses, and then a niece and a nephew just below the threshold. So, so the clock is ticking to see if they'll be able to hold the baby on the day it's born.
I hope so. I hope so. Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's lots to talk about. We've talked obviously a lot about vaccines today, but we want to talk about anything that's on your mind. Are you nervous about what's happening in terms of the CERB? Are you somebody that is trying to find work? Maybe you're having a really hard time finding work right now and you're nervous about the changes coming to the CERB. Are you, really thinking about your summer vacation plans? Are you going to be able to go anywhere this summer? I don't know about you, Dave. I've got a cottage booked for a week. We're looking forward to that. But once again, we're in our own little bubble in that cottage. But, the normal summer activities where we would head to the beautiful Ottawa Valley or, another community, those are all up in the air right now.
Yeah, especially for us with a pregnant wife, we're definitely going to be just staying home and trying to keep as isolated as we can for the final stretch over the summer. But normally we'd be doing the same thing, kind of book a cottage, get away, isolate ourselves somewhere a little bit nicer than a downtown area.
Absolutely.
But,
your road trip is basically from the living room to the kitchen.
That's exactly right.
That's your road trip.
No long trips in my near future, for sure.
No, absolutely. But I know this is your first child, is it not?
Oh, yes.
Yes. So you're very excited. Yes, as you should be. It's definitely an exciting time in your life, and I'm wishing you both the best in that. And I think this is a really important time for parents that have had babies during this pandemic. I really feel for them because in many ways they haven't had that normal support that they would have. And there's lots of different groups, of course, trying to help with that and provide that support. We know Family Services Ottawa has a really great program that's called After the Baby Blues, and there's lots of different programs that are trying to help young parents. Is that something you've already thought about, Dave?
Well, it's been challenging. It's been different, but at the same time, we're happy that so far the baby's healthy and everybody, nobody's caught COVID yet. And we've looked at things like parenting classes online through Ottawa Public Health. So some of the things that you'd expect would be available aren't available, but everybody's making an effort to make sure that we're getting something, and at the very least, we're going to be prepared for this when it comes. The one real bummer for me has been I haven't been able to go to any of the appointments. So I'm getting still photos of a tiny little baby and, My wife is right there. She's like, oh, it was the most amazing moment. I'm like, don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. I'm sitting in the parking lot like a goon.
Oh, but there is some hope, Dave, I should say, on the way in terms of bringing a new life. And it certainly gives us all hope. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. When we come back, we want to hear from you. We have a last 10 minutes or so to hear your thoughts about all the different topics we're talking about. Stay with us here on City News.
Well, we all loved our rock T-shirts growing up, right? It was our badge. Hey, we went to this concert. We knew that band inside out. So we kept doing that and kept promoting that. What's sort of happening now is that audience is dying. I always say the earth is flat. So the 60s rockers are falling off the end of the earth. So you don't see as big a sales anymore because my audience is disappearing. What's sort of helping to promote that history is the kids are buying vinyl. And luckily we have a vinyl shop in the neighborhood here, Record Center. So what's happening is I've seen kids come in with their dad. And the dad say, hey, do you have any Beatles shirts? Do you have any CBGB? Do you have any of this? I said, well, why? He said, well, because my daughter's into it. She's wearing my T-shirt. So slowly it's coming back, right? The kids are, I think, getting fed up with the generic music that's out there. And they want to click into something that, first of all, links them to their parents, something that they thoroughly enjoy now, and maybe they're passing it on to their grandkids. Pandemic has been a couple of things, definitely hard on everybody. So much messaging that's out there that people don't understand, stats that every day, Jesus Murphy, like I'm getting a headache just reading this stuff, right? So really it was just trying to understand where we were going to go from there. The city of Ottawa all of a sudden said, everybody's got to wear a mask. You got to wear it on the bus. People were scrambling, okay? And I had, the store next door had really big windows, so I just flooded the window with masks. Well, that was the activity that saved the business. People were coming in buying 2, 3, 4 masks at a time at $20 a pop here. But my masks were so different. They were the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Queen, all the pop culture. Everything else out there was medical masks. And right, so people said, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to show my rock and roll. So it became the new T-shirt as far as I'm concerned. Well, what I've done, I'm Hintonburg. I'm now at 1114A Wellington Street, which is next door to the Fab Gear store. And the reason I've changed names, I've rebranded the store, is because I was planning on retiring. And in December, I go, oh, I'm not going to retire. But I've committed to changing what the store's about. So I came up with a new name, Fab Gear's Rock Shop, where legends are dressed. And essentially get that message out. I prefer, if the shirt don't fit, you come in, you try another one on. People like to feel the fabrics with clothing. It's amazing. You'll come in and go, oh, I love that. Oh, can I try this? So that's the big difference. I'm not out to make a gazillion dollars. I stick the way I am, old school. I take cash, we take cards. Come on in and talk to the owner.
It's time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Well, I just want them to say one thing is that, that they're sorry about what happened there and that it'll never happen with another First Nations or Native people.
That's Clayton Peters. He is a survivor of the Kamloops residential school and says the discovery of the remains of 215 children at the site has triggered memories of abuse he suffered there. Clayton was only 10 years old when he and his 3 brothers were forcibly taken to the school where his parents also spent years when they were children. I can't even imagine that. Peter says he thinks some of the children he knew were buried on the grounds, and he wants the Roman Catholic Church to apologize for the suffering that caused generations of pain. We also want to hear from Angela White.
the one thing that they really want is somebody who already is versed in understanding a little bit about what they're going through so that they don't have to educate those counselors in what they're going to be telling. And some of the stories that I've heard is after what I shared, I felt like I was the one providing the support to those counselors.
This is the head of the Indian Residential School Survivors Society, Angela White. She's saying many people who experienced extreme trauma in those facilities are being triggered by the news of the discovery of over 200 children's remains at the school in Kamloops. Of course, we know the number is 215. Angela said there's a need for more Indigenous-led healing opportunities for survivors who are experiencing so much grief. We want to hear from you. If you want to talk about this horrific story, we want to hear from you. Call us now, 613-750-1310. I found this poem, and I want to share it with you because I think it's really quite poignant. I'll share it with you now. When they buried the children, what they didn't know is that they were lovingly embraced by the land, held and cradled in a mother's heart. The trees wept for them. With the wind, they sang mourning songs their mothers didn't know to sing. Bending branches to touch the earth around them, the Creator cried for them, the tears falling like rain. Mother Earth held them until they could be found. Now our voices sing the mourning songs with the trees and the wind. Light sacred fire, ensure they are never forgotten as we sing justice. That's by Abigail Echo Hawk. That really resonated with me. I hope it resonated with you. The bottom line is there is, unfortunately, the worst kept secret in Canada is that there are more children on more grounds of schools. And I've said it once, I'll say it again and again. There was no gravesite at my school. There was probably no gravesite at your school. This is absolutely heinous, and this is genocide. If you want to speak about Kamloops, what's happened in that school, certainly give us a call. A mass grave, 215 children. It seems unfathomable to even speak it. So we want to definitely hear from you if you want to speak about that. Are you having a hard time with your vaccines? Are you having a difficult time getting your mind wrapped around the news that we may be hearing from Queen's Park today at 1 o'clock? We're expecting the Premier to make some sort of announcement with Education Minister Stephen Lecce. Multiple sources have shared with City News that the news will be schools will remain closed for in-person learning. Of course, that online learning will continue and through the school year. This has not been confirmed yet, but we are watching the news. The City News team will work hard to bring you that news as soon as we hear it here. So we expect that news conference to start at 1 o'clock. Sometimes Premier Doug Ford's a little bit late, but certainly we'll bring it to you as soon as we know it. We're going to go to Stephen in Ottawa. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, how are you?
Good. You wanted to speak about the residential schools.
Yes. The people that did this should be accountable to the law. We should bring them to justice, and we should have a big trial over this. And who's ever found guilty, if they're still around, just like they did in the Nuremberg trials in Germany, same thing should happen here.
And that is going to be the most difficult part if they're still around.
We can find them.
Mm-hmm.
The RCMP took the children out of their homes, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
We can find the politicians and the people that were involved in this going back 100 years and bring them to justice.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a really good point because some of those schools only closed, of course, in the 1990s. And someone reminded me...
1996 was the last one that closed.
Exactly.
That's not very long ago. So the people that ran it, I'm pretty sure the investigators could find them and they should be brought to justice.
Mm-hmm. Stephen, I agree with you. I think, and someone reminded me the other day, during that time, the movie Jerry Maguire came out and we were listening to Alanis Morissette. I mean, this is not that long ago. This is actually, really with still in our very recent history. So I think I applaud you. I think that's an absolutely
100%. 100%. Let's have a trial going. Let's start arresting the people that murdered these little children across our country and bring them to justice and make them serve time in prison.
Do you think
life in jail?
Do you think Prime Minister
murders, all kinds of charges, dear?
Stephen, do you think Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has the appetite to do that?
I think his father was involved in residential schools too. Any Prime Minister up to 1996 was involved in residential schools here. My brother is a police officer.
Mm-hmm. It's emotional, isn't it, Stephen?
It's sickening. These politicians should be, the Liberals and the Conservatives started it with John A. Macdonald.
So it's it's definitely a difficult topic. It's a very emotional topic for sure. I really appreciate your call today. We're going to go to another caller now. And that caller is JD. Hi, JD.
Hi. Sorry, I'm in my car. It's a little... I didn't really want to dive too much into the debate and hit on everything. What I really wanted to mention is that on Monday night, I was at the Parliament Hill Memorial, or Remembrance Vigil there, with my family. And, you know, a few of the First Nations people there were just simply commenting that they were a little dismayed to have such a small turnout. Like, it's just around the Centennial Flame, which, you know, it isn't exact.
We're having a hard time with JD's connection. JD, we're having a hard time with your connection, but I think you've made a really good point that Parliament Hill has been a place where people are gathering and leaving little shoes and teddy bears and really trying to sort of pay tribute to the children that have been lost. But is it enough, is what you're asking, I'm assuming?
Well, I think everyone needs to go there. You know, one thing they were saying is there weren't a lot of people coming to pay their respects. And I think, really, if you want to see this change, just go down there, pay your respects. Just all you have to do is just show up. And, you know, when we were there, we engaged in conversation with people, First Nations people, some who were in residential schools. My 7-year-old, he smudged. That was his first time. It was really enriching, and I really encourage people to go down there and it's just simply showing your respect. You don't have to do anything more than that if you really don't want to, but, you know, at least just open your mind and learn. You don't have to get your back up. Nobody's blaming you for anything.
Yeah.
Just go in.
Thank you, JD.
Pay your respect.
Thank you. I think it's a really good point, and that is something hopefully we can do safely as well during this crisis. Of course, the pay tribute to the children who's lost their lives. And I think it really does also hopefully share with the Indigenous community that we're, as Canadians, embracing them during this grief. And unfortunately, as we know, there probably is more grief to follow. So we hope that the government acts swiftly, both on a provincial level. We know that there's been a call to search some of those residential schools here in Ontario. We know that probably each province that have had residential schools in them will have the same plea. So we appreciate everybody's feedback today. We've had some great input from you today. We always love hearing from you, of course. Rob loves hearing from you. And of course, when I have the pleasure of filling in for Rob, I love hearing from you too. So thanks so much. Talked about lots of different topics today. When we come back, we have more for you. You'll definitely want to stay with us here on City News. And of course, we're keeping our eye on Queen's Park and what's happening with schools. Every parent, every teacher, every grandparent, and of course, every student has their eyes on Doug Ford and Stephen Lecce today. Stay with us here on City News.
This is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News. Now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, June 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 22 degrees, 21 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The federal government is sending out information packages to Indigenous communities on how to access a $27 million fund. Now, this was set up to help Indigenous communities search former residential school sites for remains. It comes in the wake of the horrific discovery of the 215 at a former residential school in Kamloops. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney now joins us with more.
The federal government is vowing to help Indigenous communities any way they can in the searches that they want to conduct, and will be informing them today how they can access $27 million in funding that was initially set aside back in 2019. Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Carolyn Bennett says they know leaders are looking for support for research, access to archaeological expertise, and reburial in home communities.
They want the work to be Indigenous-led, community-based, survivor-centric, and culturally sensitive.
But if the funding was earmarked in 2019, why has it taken a tragic discovery 2 years later to free up the cash for these searches?
As the engagement took place, it was a matter of us then going with the details to Treasury Board to be able to explain exactly how the money would be distributed.
The government is also demanding an apology from the Pope and are calling on Catholics to put pressure on the church to release the records from the residential schools that the church ran. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
Now, a trio of Ottawa City councillors asking the Prime Minister to have the Sir John A. Macdonald name removed from the Parkway following the grim discovery of those human bodies at that residential school site. City News Time, 11:02. Province releasing daily figures showing 733 new cases of COVID-19 today. 41 of the cases are in Ottawa. There are 3 more in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 1 each in Renfrew and Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. The new case numbers come from about 31,800 tests. The province also says that there were 25 more deaths. City News Time, 11:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Plenty of sunshine for the area today. A warm high with a southwest wind, the high 28 degrees. Tonight will cloud over, rain for the overnight hours, 15 for the low. And tomorrow, cooler with light rain in the morning, showers for the afternoon. Tomorrow, the high 21. For today, the high 28.
And right now, 22 degrees in Ottawa. It's 21 in Smiths Falls. At 1 o'clock this afternoon, the Premier, Health and Education Ministers are holding a media briefing at Queen's Park. Generally expected, the trio will announce a government decision on schools. Will they reopen this academic year, what's left of it, or will everyone continue learning remotely for the final 3 weeks? It is now okay to leave the house for non-essential reasons, but there really isn't anywhere to go. Provincial stay-at-home order declared as a third wave of COVID-19 infections threaten to overwhelm hospitals has now ended. City News reporter Kevin Meisner now with what that means.
Tight business restrictions remain in place, even though we're no longer under an Ontario-wide stay-at-home order. Dan Kelly with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business tells me limited business openings should be allowed right now.
We're asking the Premier to let Ontarians get a haircut this week, to let Ontarians dine on a patio and maybe have a table or two inside, to allow them to go shopping with perhaps a 10 or 15% capacity constraint. This isn't a lot to ask.
The province has set June 14th as the target date for stage 1 of reopening, but Kelly says he's receiving signals the government may be willing to move that up and could make the announcement Friday. Stage 1 allows for patio dining and limited retail shopping. When we can get haircuts remains fuzzy, possibly not until early July. Kevin Meisner, Queen's Park.
And Canada is doubling its commitment to the COVAX Global Vaccine Sharing Alliance, now doubling it to $440 million. The International Development Minister, Karina Gould, is not committing, though, to when Canada may donate its excess vaccine doses or how many doses it could send to other countries. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM
and 1310 AM.
And of course, you may be watching us on Rogers TV as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Of course, we're here on City News. I'm Sam LaPrade filling in for Rob Snow. As we do every single Wednesday, we head to the Ottawa Valley and we speak to the one and only Bruce McIntyre.
Good morning and welcome back, Sam.
Thank you so much. Bruce McIntyre, of course, reporter with the Eganville Leader. There is lots happening in your neck of the woods, isn't there?
It really was. I mean, it's funny, last week Rob and I were chatting. He said, what's new? What's exciting? I said, Rob, it's actually a quiet week for a long weekend. And then this week, bam, it was like night and day. It's been wonderful experiences. It's been sad experiences. It's been different experiences. So it's all things Valley. So where do you want to start, Sam?
Well, I'd love to start really because so much on the minds of Canadians and, of course, our listeners here at City News about the tragedy in Kamloops. And I know there's a local twist to this, isn't there?
There certainly is. Golden Lake is home of the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan, and it's a small community. There's about 400 that live on the reserve, and it's a very loving, caring community. I go there once a week, minimum, to get gas. I will admit that. And but I also know quite a few of the residents there. And this week was especially poignant because they had a special ceremony honoring the 215 children plus all the other children across Canada. And it especially hit home. One of the residents, Jackie Sarrazin, she, as a teenager, she watched her two brothers being taken away to residential school, and one never came back. Her younger brother, Joey, who was 13 at the time. Well, he was younger, but they had spent some time there, and he and his brother decided to run away and come back home to Golden Lake. And they were down in Brantford at one of the most horrific institutions across Canada, the Mohawk Institute, just the House of Horrors, no other way to explain it. And they decided they had enough. They wanted to run away, and they tried to get back home to Golden Lake. And unfortunately, Joey was killed crossing the tracks near Brampton. And the official police report listed him as trespasser, and he basically never came home. And Jackie and other residents of the community on Monday evening had his picture along with the orange shirts. They've done ceremonies the last few years wearing the orange shirts to remember the children that were scooped up, but this year was especially somber. That was the word to explain. I spoke to Lisa Manesca-Hoko. She is a past chief of the Algonquins, and she said, I said, Lisa, no word, how would you sum up the evening? She said somber. Just, it's somber and sad.
It is absolutely somber and sad, and I'm so sorry to hear that. That's really tragic. Let's shift gears a little bit. I think it's really an interesting story because this story has garnered so much attention, not only in the Ottawa Valley, but outside the Valley. And usually it's not really a big news story when a fire chief retires, but this certainly has been an ongoing story for a number of years.
It really is. It's funny, and that just really came by accident. It was 3 a.m. Monday morning, Sunday, Monday morning, 3 a.m., and I was out walking my dog. I woke up, and I just couldn't get to sleep. And I was walking 2 blocks down, and I saw the fire truck outside Guy's house. I thought he retired yesterday. What's going on? So I went home, and I started writing the story. I sent him a note around 4:30 a.m. I said, Guy, I thought you were retiring. And so he got back to me around 7 a.m. He said, yeah, I'm done yesterday. I returned the truck today. I said, well, we got to do something about this. So Guy gained national headlines in 2018 when he was dismissed. He went to work Monday morning, as he did every day, walked to work, and they asked him to come into a meeting at lunchtime. He said, Guy, thanks for your service, but you're done. You're terminated, effective immediately. Please clean out all your personal belongings and out you go because you're too old. And Guy said, what? They said we passed a mandatory policy now that all firefighters, regardless whether you're a firefighter or the chief, you must retire by the age of 60. There'll be no grandfathering in, so off you go. And after a day of trying to shake his head of what just happened to him, he retained legal counsel, and he launched a $1.3 million lawsuit against the town, citing that discrimination, that he was not too old for the job, and that he had intended to work up till the age of 70. Anyone who knows Guy, this man is a picture of health. If I was a 30-year-old isn't as healthy as Guy. He walks, he hikes, he's always active, and to take away the job was like, what? So he was hired on a year and a half later by Whitewater Region Fire Department to help. They were restructuring, reorganizing their department, and they wanted to transition in a new fire chief, and Guy said, no problem at all. So he took on the 15-month contract. He successfully helped reorganize the department. They have 5 stations, and he left with his head held high, and he said, you know what? I left on my own terms. And in the end, the town and Guy did settle. It was a closed agreement, so no one knows what the details of the settlement were. But it was really a landmark little case because all the fire unions and departments across not just Ontario but the country were watching this, because most municipal governments have volunteer fire departments, and if something were to happen, if they were to have a lawsuit launched against them, it would just cripple their budget. And they were watching this very carefully. How does this affect our department? And it's still, a lot of departments are adopting that 60-year-old mandatory retirement age, even if you're the chief, because when you're the chief, 9 out of 10 times, you are at a command table. You are not picking up the hose. You are not going smashing down the door. You are behind the scenes. You're just as important, but you are directing traffic, so to speak. And that's what Guy just couldn't figure out. And as I say, Guy is not like a man on a cane. He's very active. So, and it's ironic when he dropped by my house yesterday for the photo. He pulled the truck up, and he had a shirt on. It said, "Your first mistake was thinking I'm an old fart."
Well, he's got a sense of humor about it. I know it wasn't funny at the time, of course, but he certainly had a sense of humor about it, and I think it was really an interesting case to follow for sure. Let's talk a little bit about, of course, how important tourism is to the Ottawa Valley. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Many of those communities rely on tourism, whether it be Deep River, Pembroke, Renfrew. It really is an important piece. How is the Ottawa Valley bracing for potentially another summer where there won't be a lot of travel?
It's scary is a word, and one word is scary. I know that the government, I'm not sure the provincial or federal level, I believe provincial has allocated $1 million for, we're designated RTO 11, which means that's our sector, and they'll be helping out tourist operators up to $20,000 to help relaunch their businesses, whether it's making preparations for COVID or whatever, but that's really a drop in the bucket. It was hurting. Last year was horrible for our tourist industry. In Renfrew County, Sam, tourism is the number 3 economic driver. It's slowly creeping up to number 2. Number 1 is forestry and lumber value-added products, and tourism is number 3, and it's gaining very quickly on number 2. So that just gives you an idea how important it is to our local economy. And they took a kick in. Golf courses have reopened slowly, but that's a good thing. But the tour, for example, whitewater rafting. Last year, how do you safely put 18 people in a raft? You couldn't. Right. So what they're doing this year, I don't know. I haven't spoken to the operators, but we have whitewater rafting, we have trails, biking, golf, and they really took a hit. It was really bad for us. I think we're hopeful that things get a little better this summer, but you just have to wait and see. I know, for example, up in Deep River, you might be familiar with Deep River, Sam.
You know I am. I love Deep River.
I know a friend up there. I said, "What's going on in Deep?" I said, "I'm talking to Sam. What's going on up there?" And now what they are doing is people are canoeing or boating. A lot of canoes are going across the river to Quebec. They're going camping over there. Interesting. And the question is, can they come back? As considered interprovincial travel, do they have to quarantine? Nice. What happens if they come back? And it's funny, kind of smuggling at night, going by canoe across the river, pulling it up and going camping in Quebec.
Where are they crossing over at Swisha, do you know?
Yeah, there as well, but they're trying. But no, they're actually down by the marina.
Oh, okay, right there. Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. That's pretty blatant. So that's one way to get around the tourism and the restrictions.
Wow. For those that aren't familiar, Bruce and I love talking about Deep River because I grew up in Deep River as a little girl. Lots of fond memories of growing up in the Mountain View subdivision between, of course, the town of Chalk River and Deep River, and so we love chatting about Deep River. But it's really, I think about just how much traffic, even from a tourism perspective, just even along Highway 17, those restaurants and those businesses really rely on that.
They do, and unfortunately, the one restaurant in Chalk River had a terrible fire. The roof collapsed last year. Right. So that's been closed permanently, so that's gone. But yes, along 17, in Cobden especially, that's a very popular spot destination to stop. On your way to whitewater rafting, the hotel there was really down in numbers last year, so hopefully things will bounce back. One keeps their fingers crossed.
Absolutely.
And, what else is going on in the county? It's been a very busy week. We had We've had opioids. I didn't really get a chance to read the story in depth. That's the joys of working at home. Mm-hmm. But I know our paramedics and the police are very concerned about the dramatic rise in opioids death and overdoses in the county. We're not immune. I mean, people think of it as a big city issue, but it's not. It is affecting everywhere, and especially in Renfrew County. The numbers have really skyrocketed the last year. It has to be directly with the pandemic. People are isolated. The rate of mental illness is increasing, and there's different ways to deal with it, but that's an ongoing and growing concern for our first responders.
Well, definitely we'll be keeping an eye on that. I know Rob will definitely want to talk to you about that in the coming weeks. Always a pleasure to speak to my friend Bruce McIntyre from the Eganville Leader. Thanks so much, Bruce.
Thank you, Sam. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you. When we come back, are you a business owner? Are you concerned about that deadline to file those taxes on June 15th? We're going to find all about it. Stay with us here on City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the center. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring, and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box, as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years, and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
The opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Rogers TV and, of course, City News. The Rob Snow Show. I'm filling in for Rob. I'm Sam LaPrade. Are you a business owner who is concerned about this tax filing deadline of June 15th? I know a lot of people were hoping the government would have provided an extension. However, they did not. So we wanted to speak with Eric Saumure, of course, principal for Zenbooks. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Sam. How are you?
Good. You are probably one of the busiest people I know because it is always tax time right now. And of course, just coming off those personal taxes and getting all those business entrepreneurs on the right track for their own business taxes. Has it been more stressful this year, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think there's a lot of people struggling to try and get their stuff together for the tax deadline. That's been a big thing, and even just paying their taxes this year, people are either struggling, and just trying to find a way to scrap up the money.
It really is challenging. And when I think about last year, I think there was a bit of a sigh of relief, if you will, that deadline was extended into September. Did you think that was going to happen maybe for even 2021, just given the fact we're still in a pandemic?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just with other, accountants in the industry, we all kind of expected that maybe there would be some sort of extension. I mean, realistically, Revenue Quebec did extend, in essence, to basically a month. And even the IRS in the United States extended it 1 month. But the Canada Revenue Agency said, no, we're just going to keep it as is.
What do you think the actual ripple effect of that will be? I mean, if, to your point, if people are trying to struggle to pay their taxes and they don't have the money, it's not like the government's going to get the money from them if they don't actually have it or have that opportunity to file on time. Is that going to, negatively affect, of course, the small business owners, medium business owners that are already stressed?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, these business owners are struggling with all these lockdowns in and out and closures, and they're struggling trying to figure out those rules, let alone put their tax, documents together, right? So there's been a real struggle there. I mean, realistically, one of the big benefits from this year is that the government did say that if your income was below $75,000, and if you are receiving some COVID benefits, that you do get some extension on the payment, but you still got to file on time. So, yeah.
So let's talk about that, because I think there's a lot of people, certainly I've sort of got two groups in my friends, some people are like, oh, I'll worry about it when I worry about it. And some people are like, I have to file on time. What is, when somebody isn't filing on time, what sort of message does that send to the CRA and in particular HST? Because of course you're really just holding the government's money.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know exactly what red flags come up on CRA's side when people are filing late, but there's definitely some penalties if you file after this June 15th deadline. So, these penalties can be pretty harsh, and thankfully the interest rate is not too high if you can't pay it on time, and you can always negotiate with CRA if you can't make payments. And I think that the CRA has been pretty understanding when we've had to call them just to kind of see, make a payment plan for business owners who, can't pay over the next 2 months. They got to make a payment plan over the next 6-9 months. The CRA has been listening for that, but they still just have not pushed the actual deadline to file, right?
It's really interesting because I think we're sort of looking at the tale of two businesses, if you will. I think a lot of businesses obviously very much suffered in 2020 and into 2021. And there's another group of businesses that actually exceeded expectations in terms of their revenue in that time. Maybe it was the service they offered or the product that they offered. Actually, they made a lot more money. So Absolutely. What is the challenge? How do business owners manage that so that there isn't this big shock on June 15th or before saying, oh my gosh, I owe, $100,000 in taxes?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And what we've seen is that there's been a real K-shaped kind of recovery, right? Like you have some people that are doing extremely well and other people that are doing really badly. And so we've had people reach out to us saying, look, I've made a ton of money. I don't know how much I'm going to owe. And I need some sort of estimate, right? We've had clients approach us mid-year where they wanted us to actually do their bookkeeping throughout the year just because they knew they had a really good year, but they had no idea what to expect. They had never been in that kind of like tax bracket where the tax rates can go up substantially to 53.5%, right?
And I think it's really important to know that there's a lot of people that are great entrepreneurs. They've got great ideas. They, can attract lots of business their way. but maybe bookkeeping isn't their thing, right? Maybe accounting isn't their thing. And so it's hard to be a business owner because you really want to do the parts of your business that you love. And some people are a bit of an ostrich putting their head in their sand about the other stuff that comes with a business. But of course, they can only do the great stuff if they've done the stuff that maybe isn't so pleasant for them.
For sure. And, people should focus on what they're good at, and get really, really good at that. Jim Collins has the hedgehog effect. You kind of just get really, really good at one thing and delegate the other part. Right? And so I think that's what business owners have kind of done in this time where they've seen all these struggles. They're like, oh my God, I really have to just kind of make money like that and survive. And then they've kind of put aside some of the administrative work, right? But now I think we've seen a lot of business owners start to actually delegate that out. So hiring accountants and bookkeepers to actually deal with the administrative component of their business, which actually helps them, really succeed in the business because now they don't have to put hours and hours aside for that.
And I think a lot of people, are business owners, but maybe they're just a sole proprietor, for instance, and they start to sort of dip their toe and think about incorporation, but that can kind of feel, big. It feels like maybe that's expensive. What are the benefits of incorporation, Eric, when it comes to the finance side?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big benefits with incorporation is if you're going to be making more money in your business than what you actually need to live on, there's a deferral benefit there. So that way you can reinvest in your business. So you can keep, investments in there, or you can invest in real estate or whatnot from your corporation. So that's a big benefit for sure. Some of the other just overall benefits. There's some tax planning with having an investment co and an operating co and all of that. It's a little bit easier to have family members help out in the business, where you can pay them reasonable amounts for the amount of work that they're actually doing. So that's a little bit easier with a corporation than as a sole proprietor.
And if somebody's looking to sort of get more information about that, where's the best place somebody can go to sort of see if this is for them?
Oh, for sure. I mean, they can reach out to me anytime. Eric Saumure, Eric at Zenbooks.ca, or you can just check out our website, Zenbooks.ca.
Excellent. I appreciate your time, and don't worry. I know June 15th is approaching. I can feel it coming down the pipe at me, but I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much, Eric.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, anytime.
And if you're a business owner, we're certainly thinking about you. Small and medium-sized businesses, certainly, and all businesses have really been stretched during this time, during this COVID-19 pandemic, and we know it's been very challenging. So we know it's hard to manage all those things, but we wanted to give you a few tips there. If you're trying to get those taxes in, the government is not extending that deadline, so really, really important to note. You know that since Monday, we have absolutely not stopped talking about the horrific discovery of the remains of 215 children in Kamloops, British Columbia. We will not stop talking about it. This is going to be a story, unfortunately, that we're going to be talking about for a long time because, there's a great understanding that there's probably more children. So we're going to be continuing that conversation. But we wanted to go to Kamloops, BC, and we're really, it's really important that we have a reporter there. We have Martin McMahon, a City News reporter. We're going to speak with Martin about what it's like to be in Kamloops at this time and hear the stories that he's heard. So you'll want to stay here on City News, absolutely, for that discussion. Stay with us here on City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, the 2nd of June. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buchan. Right now in Ottawa and in Smith Falls, mainly sunny skies and 23 degrees. Here's what's making news right now. Provincial health officials report 41 new cases of COVID-19 in Ottawa out of 733 new cases across Ontario. There are 25 new deaths in the province due to the virus. Elsewhere locally, Leeds Grenville Lanark Health Unit confirming 1 new case of COVID-19. And Public Health Ontario is reporting 3 new cases in Eastern Ontario and 1 new case of the virus in Renfrew County. The local health units update their numbers in the afternoon. A trio of Ottawa City councillors are asking Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to have the Sir John A. Macdonald name taken off the local National Capital Commission Parkway following the discovery of the remains of 215 children at the site of a former residential school in Kamloops. In a letter, the councillors, Catherine McKenney, Jeff Leeper and Teresa Kavanaugh, say they wish to follow the example of Charlottetown Council, which voted unanimously on May 31st to remove a statue of Sir John A. Macdonald from their downtown core. Under Macdonald, the Canadian government created the residential school system. The councillors want to see a renaming that respects wishes and perspectives of local Indigenous communities. Premier Doug Ford is expected to announce today whether or not schools in Ontario will reopen to in-person learning this month. Ford is scheduled to address the issue with his Education Minister, Stephen Lecce, and Health Minister, Christine Elliott, this afternoon. Students in Ontario have been doing online learning since April 19th. The school's announcement comes as Ontario's stay-at-home order has lifted, but most other public health measures remain in place. I'm Sarah Buchan. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I'm Sam LaPrade filling in for Rob Snow. As you know, we've been talking a lot about Kamloops, BC, so we thought, let's go there. We're speaking now with City News reporter Martin McMahon. Hi, Martin.
Hi, Sam. Thanks so much for having me on.
Of course. I can't even imagine when you got the call to head to Kamloops to talk about the residential school, the grisly finding of 215 children, their remains. What was your first reaction, Martin?
Well, obviously, it's an emotional time, right? I mean, you get the call in the morning. In my case, I got the call, 7:30 in the morning and just about to start my shift, and I got the call to go out there. And I had heard about the story just before I'd gone to bed, actually, the previous night, so I was aware of it. But then when you say, okay, you're actually going to go and talk to members of the community, there is that moment of shock. And then there's you drive out there for a few hours. Vancouver's about 3.5, 4 hours away. So you think about it and you reflect on it as you drive up there. And obviously, when you get to the community, and I drove essentially straight to the band and the Kamloops Secwépemc band, and spoke with the chief directly, with the school in the background, and it was just it's one of those moments you'll never forget.
And what words do you even start with? I think I've struggled certainly this week to come up with words for this because it just seems unfathomable. I mean, I think, we've talked about this a lot. This has been Canada's worst kept secret. But when we start to talk about it, did you have a hard time finding words?
I did. And certainly in this industry, a lot of us are people who can find words. That's what we do. So what I tried to do in the story was really tell the story of the community in Kamloops, and the story, from various people I spoke with in the Kamloops Secwépemc Nation. They were saying, there was a very emotional moment where when I looked at they were setting up essentially a memorial, and they wrapped this tree with messages from local children. So we've got children in Kamloops writing these messages to children who died at that school and never came home. And, one of the messages was every child matters. Another said, you didn't deserve this. And it's just, and when you reflect on it, right, it's not this number 215. These were all individual kids with individual stories who went to school, were taken from their families, and then they didn't get to come home, right? So, but I will say, when you're asking about what words can you find, Premier John Horgan actually said something this is BC Premier John Horgan said something that I thought was quite appropriate, which is, I want us all to live with this burden. And I think that really is appropriate for those of us certainly who are not of, Indigenous descent. What do we do with this, right? We have to live with this burden, and we have to figure out some way of moving forward, some way of addressing this, even on an individual level. I think this is a moment of reflection.
It certainly is, and I think every single Canadian needs to pause. I know certainly I took a look at the Truth and Reconciliation report. I had reviewed it before, but I think it really is a call to Canadians. I think there's one thing to lower flags, and I think there's a place for all that. There's a place for the memorials, but there absolutely is, and it is now, a time for action. Is that what you're hearing from the community as well?
Absolutely, and I think, you mentioned the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I think certainly the Tk'emlúps Secwépemc people are asking for people to read that Truth and Reconciliation Commission final report. Really, there's 94 calls to action in there, and there is that opportunity for everyone to. So I think there is this attitude for a lot of people. We're shocked, and for certain people that went through a certain generation of the school system, there's an element there. But the reality is, it's not as if there wasn't any publicization of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, right? I mean, that was out there. People have seen this in the news. There have been various stories. I'm not saying that people knew about this specific 215 children at this school, and that essentially a mass grave or those remains have been found in different places around the school. I'm not saying people knew about this specific situation, but we've all known about residential schools, and there is this element of, well, we didn't know the full extent of it. But that report is out there. Media coverage has been happening. We need to all acquaint ourselves with that report and the latest on this.
Absolutely, and I think it's one of those conversations that needs to happen at every single level. I don't know about you, but when I went to school, this certainly wasn't part of the curriculum. That needs to change. There's a lot of talk about people that have been talking about this for years. They were disbelieved. They were told they had false information. Have you spoke with anybody from that situation yet, Martin, about someone that finally feels like they have been heard?
Well, I think that really is what this is all about, right? With this radar, but it does show you to the extent to which First Nations in this country aren't always listened to, right? They had the Tk'emlúps Secwépemc people. They had to go out and get this ground-penetrating radar and put it into the ground to scan the ground. They had to go to that extent because essentially the authorities in this country for decades wouldn't believe them, because I know that the word that everyone's throwing around right now is discovery. But for a lot of these people, they're not calling this a discovery. They're calling this a confirmation of something that was known in that community. And it's kind of when you actually say it out loud like that, they were going around in their community talking to each other about, this was a known thing. This child left, my friend left, didn't come back. I think they're around here. And there were the rumors, right? And it really is just, it's actually difficult to wrap your head around it.
It really is. I mean, I've talked about it all week, and I think every time I sort of open up my mouth and say 215 children in a mass grave, I, first of all, can't believe it's in Canada. It shouldn't be anywhere in the world, but it's one of those things where I think Canada's pointed their finger at a lot of other countries in the world, and we've got to point the finger at us now and say, this is a huge, huge issue. Let's talk about the people that you've spoken to. Have you actually spoken? Have you had the honor of speaking to any of the families yet, or friends, or anybody associated directly with maybe one of the children that has passed away?
Well, as I mentioned, I spoke with Chief Casimir, chief of the Tk'emlúps Secwépemc people, and her mother and grandmother actually attended the school. So, and that just shows you the connection to this whole situation. Basically, she was saying to me that essentially everybody that's a member of the band has some sort of connection to that school, because it was the largest residential school in the country. And essentially, if you were Indigenous and you lived anywhere in its vicinity, you were going to that school. And so I think for people in that community, it's so traumatic, this whole situation, because this was already oral history. This was fact in their community. And now we've got the verification. But it really is that sort of reopening of this, and it's horrific, right? I think people are looking at their children and thinking, you know, it's really difficult to reflect on when you look at, and even as I was there and people were at the memorial and they were leaving flowers, and I was seeing, you know, an Indigenous girl putting a bouquet of flowers down and reflecting for a moment, and it's difficult not to really, like, you're in this moment of shock where this girl 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, she could be in the ground there in a grave that's unmarked, and nobody knows where she was, and no one knows where to go and visit her. And it's horrific, I guess is the best way to describe it.
I've said it time and time again in the last number of days. There was no grave site at my school. Was there a grave site at your school, Martin?
No.
I mean, it's unfathomable to me that this is what we're speaking about today. I really have a very, very difficult time thinking that there are another 130 residential schools in this country, and each and every one of them, in my humble opinion, should be searched. Is that what you're hearing? Are you hearing a call from the Kamloops people that they want the entire country searched, each and every one of those schools?
Absolutely. They're calling for accountability, and they want these sites to be searched. If there's oral history indicating that there is a grave site, or if there's any evidence to suggest that, I'm certainly hearing that there is that call, right? And it's this idea of accountability, right? I think there are certain people in this country that scoffed when the Prime Minister a number of years ago referred to cultural genocide, but this is real genocide. If you hear from some of these people and they're explaining, certainly if you look at these 215 children, the remains of 215 children, and when people use words like genocide, it's difficult to argue credibly that it wasn't a genocide. And it's certainly a moment of reckoning for all of us to just consider the society we live in and what it's based on.
Are the people of Kamloops, particularly the people you've spoken to, looking for the churches, and in particular the Catholic Church, to come out with an apology? Are they looking to the Pope to actually speak about this topic?
And this is not a new thing, right? It's actually one of the calls to action in this Truth and Reconciliation Commission final report. One of the calls to action in there, one of the 94 calls to action, is actually for the Pope to come forward and apologize for the Catholic Church's role in this, and central role, you might say, in this. So that call remains, certainly. I know that there has been a statement from various Catholic organizations. There was actually the Indigenous Relations Minister in BC actually said yesterday that he is going to press the Catholic Church to cooperate in terms of providing any records or information that could help with identifying these children. Because I guess the next step here is there has been some talk about potentially reinterring the remains of these children and relocating them to their home communities, because these children were not just from the Kamloops area. A lot of these children were taken from other parts of BC and beyond and relocated to the school. So if they can verify who these children were and potentially relocate them to their home communities, I know that is something that is being contemplated, but still very early days, and there still has to be it has to certainly be led by the First Nations involved, the Tk'emlúps, Secwépemc, and the home nations of these children, depending on what their protocols are, what their traditions are. So certainly going to be a story that there's not going to be a quick conclusion to this. This is going to be an ongoing process. We're going to get an update in about 2 weeks, I think, from the Tk'emlúps-Secwépemc people and get a sense of sort of what the next steps are. There was that initial period of notifying everybody, and certainly my understanding is the community is discussing what the next steps are to do. Like, we know that there are 215 children buried on the grounds there, but what's the next step? And I think that's something that certainly needs to be well thought out, and every nation might have its own protocols on this.
Martin, I'm hoping we can call on you in the future to keep us up to date, especially with you being on the ground there. Really appreciate that very much.
Thanks for having me on, Sam.
Thank you so much. Martin McMahon, City News reporter on the ground in Kamloops. When we come back, we're going to turn our focus back to City Hall and speak with the one and only Sue Sherring. Stay with us here on City News.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, it's got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying. And then I shut my business down for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries. Started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours and hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting, and anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not, but more so now because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff, and then again, their situations and their circumstances change.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I'm Sam LaPrade. We certainly have talked about a lot of different issues today here on City News. And just a reminder, we are keeping our eyes on Queen's Park for any news about schools. We know at 1 o'clock today, roughly, that Premier Doug Ford, of course, the Minister of Education, Minister of Health, will also be sharing the news about schools. We've certainly heard multiple sources tell City News that the schools will not reopen, but we have not had confirmation yet. I think every parent on the planet, or certainly in this province, is looking to find out what that news is. So we'll definitely bring that to you. We wanted to speak with our guest always on Wednesdays, and that's Sue Sherring. Hi, Sue.
Hi, good morning.
Sue, of course, Ottawa Sun City Hall columnist. There is lots to talk about.
There always is.
Well, let's start with transportation, because, of course, recently we heard John Manconi, of course, general manager of OC Transpo, stepping down, retiring from the city. Who's going to fill those big boots?
I actually would love to know the answer to that. I couldn't even guess. It is such, especially now with all the issues with LRT, it is a huge job. I can barely imagine anyone wanting that job. I mean, Manconi has a certain style about him that he always comes across as very in charge and very knowledgeable, and I think he's had the ability over the years to convince councillors that they're on the right track. But that is not an easy job.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I think he's definitely done that job and created some great leadership. He's been in some very, very difficult situations, of course, some tragic situations, and always held himself as a great leader. And I know there's been lots of criticism about the LRT and lots of different things, but I'm with you. I can't even imagine in a million years doing that job, to be honest with you, Sue. So I'm anxious to see who they're going to get to fill that. Lots of other news, of course, coming out of City Hall. When we think about the pandemic, we think about everything going on. Of course, the mind always goes to our taxes. Are you hearing anything about our taxes and what we're expecting there, Sue?
Well, I mean, I'm not hearing a specific number, but clearly we have lost millions of dollars at the city. There's, with OC Transpo alone, I mean, the numbers are astronomical. So I think, and this isn't sort of anything I know from inside baseball, but I think there's going to have to be a balance of, raising taxes a little bit and then increasing the debt load. I mean, I don't think we can make up for all we've lost with one tax increase. I mean, there'd be a huge revolt, especially during COVID and the pandemic, where, lots of people are on furlough. They aren't bringing in any money. It's going to be fascinating to watch. I mean, I say fascinating because I'm a City Hall geek, but where they find the appropriate line will be very interesting to see.
It certainly will. And we heard recently today on City News that there's been a call to think about the naming of Sir John A. Macdonald, the Parkway, of course. We're seeing some city councillors say, maybe there should be a change there in light of the news regarding the residential school in Kamloops. We know Charlottetown is having a statue removed there. Lots of talk about this. There's been lots of talk about this for years. What are you hearing?
Well, I mean, in my mind, it's just, I wish when we were faced with a set of facts that, Sir John A. Macdonald is the one who, pushed for residential schools. Let's just get it over with. Let's not dwell in this ugliness. I think it should be renamed. And I mean, ironically, I've been around City Council so long that I was at the debate to rename Wellington Street after Sir John A. Macdonald. Clearly, in my mind, a bad decision. I don't think we want, any street in Ottawa, but especially such an important piece of property named after someone who came up with this idea. Look, no one knew when they named the street after him what he had been behind, and I have no idea whether he knew, and to me that doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Let's just change it. City Hall, I find, Ottawa City Hall just has this habit of letting things fester. It was a bad decision. Get rid of the name. Let's move on. Mm-hmm. There are so many great people in Ottawa that we could name it after. This isn't appropriate. It bothers me a lot, and let's just change it. And
yeah. We're about 18 months away from an election here in this city, and of course, if
I can't wait, Sam?
I know. It's like Christmas Day for you, Sue. I know it is, leading up to it especially. When we think about who's going to be running, who's going to put their hat in the ring again, maybe of course, councillors that are sitting right now. What are you hearing? Any rumors? I know we've heard some rumors about Bob Chiarelli for that big seat of Jim Watson's.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the big question is whether Jim Watson is going to run again. And obviously, I mean, it doesn't serve him well at all to make any sort of an announcement. If he says he's leaving, then he immediately becomes a huge target.
Right.
I've always heard rumors that he has tried to find something else suitable for himself. I don't think he in any way wants to retire. So I think if he can't find something that suits him, he'll run again. But who knows? But there's certainly lots of people on council who would, Matthew Fleury is one. He's definitely put out feelers. Tim Tierney would love to run. I think depending on the field, someone like Shawn Menard will run as well.
You're talking about the mayor's seat?
Yes. Yes. Sorry if I didn't make that clear.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to be clear. So I think there's lots of sitting city councillors that would be interested in the big chair, of course, if Mayor Watson didn't put his name in the ring. And of course, if by chance, he did put his name in, I think he'll see more competition probably than he has in the last few races. Would you agree?
I'm not 100% positive about that. I believe that while people like you and I may see his reign at council a little bit differently because we watch it very closely, I think generally speaking the public is still happy with him. There hasn't been like some sort of big issue where he's really faltered. I may not always admire him, but he does run a pretty smooth city council. He hasn't really stepped in it. And I think, in my mind, if he runs, it will only serve him if a number of people run. The more people that run, the better guarantee he has that he'll win. And I think, unless someone that I've never thought of or maybe not even heard of comes out of the background and goes one-on-one, like if he's got 2 or 3 people running against him, he's going to win in my mind. And that's just, it's not because I have some sort of crystal ball. That's just the way things roll. I mean, he's the name. Everyone knows who he is. And while I might be critical of him, I don't think the general public is that much.
Well, we'll definitely be keeping our eye on your column in the Ottawa City, the Ottawa Sun. Thank you so much to Ottawa Sun City Hall columnist Sue Sherring. Thanks so much for joining us.
Fun talking, Sam. Thanks
Always
a
a pleasure. And thank you so much.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.